I am not hearing you.
There we go. Is it better now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you now. Yes.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Listen, listen, listen. Yes, Mr. Franklin. My goodness. Barbados, God will fight for you. The senators had a sick out today.
It would appear so. Um, at least, you know, but I got a call from some Bob today, and he asked me for a comment. I don't know if he would bring it, but I said, well, the turnout wasn't as what I would have expected, but at least the senators came out.
The senators. No, I heard. Well, the report said that there were 9 of them there, and there's supposed to be 21, right?
There's supposed to be 21 senators. 9 makes a quorum.
9 makes a quorum.
Yes, so you can meet with 9.
Uh-huh.
They're barely scrambled enough to meet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that shows the level of interest. You have a debate going on about the national insurance and social security and people's pensions, and senators didn't turn up. So I believe they responded to our call. So I can't fault them for that one. I praise them for it. What concerns me most, though, Marcia, is that the Senate, after they adjourned, went into a session with people for national insurance and the actuary to explain the bill. You imagine that they are now finding out what is in the bill?
Who are now finding out what's in the bill?
The senators.
Huh?
They wait the session with the senators to explain the bill to them. I understand Ronald Adams, the actuary, the director of national insurance, and somebody else was there, and they're explaining what's going on to the senators. It shows that these people, because they have the numbers, they're doing what they like, and not even to their own people, they're not explaining anything.
So what were they meeting about today then? If they had to adjourn and then go to meet to understand, so what was the point?
No. If your show didn't come about, they would have met today and the bill would have been passed. It is this show that forced them to backtrack and try to do the right thing. But there's no right way to do the wrong. There's no right way to do the wrong thing. They're doing the wrong thing all the time. This thing should be circulated among the people in the country, and let us make our comments on it. You just don't put it up there and then do it what the minister Jordan says, or they're gonna have a education session after that. So suppose we don't like what they're giving us. You know, I certainly don't. Not I've read the legislation. So it is not. No, I think it's too much power, and you can do what you like because there's nobody to say war, and they're just misbehaving. This is misbehavior. This is nothing short of that.
Yeah,
the Senate was in session today to pass this bill, but the feedback from people who watch the show and report it back to them, or even if they watch it themselves, they see the people's reaction and saw the comments in the press and on social media, they decided, well, look, let me explain to the Senate what's going on. Even the Senate didn't know.
Even the senators don't know, and that's appalling. Guys, are we listening to this? I'm really hoping we're listening. And a lot of people have called and they said to me that they learned so much from the show. So we're going to ask you to share. And people, guys, this is something that we did together. And if you look at my screen, it says when the people stand up, the powers fall down. Right? Power of the people. That's what this is. It's really us coming together, you coming together, you sharing the live, you logging on each night. We've been going since Sunday night. And you know, some of us tired, but we're still going because this is important. This is about the people. This is about the poor people. It's about the elderly. The more I think about it, you know, Mr. Franklin, I said to my husband, this is really elder abuse, because you are waiting for people to be, you know, there's you know, in your old age, and you are, as you were saying, can you imagine a 68-year-old man, you know, still working in certain fields, in driving a truck, all these you know, putting people through hardship in their older years, where we should be honoring the elderly, you know, honoring and helping the poor among us. There were, remember last year, Christmas, I think it was last Christmas or 2 Christmases ago, there were so many elderly people waiting on their pension checks because they live off these checks, you know. And so now you're really snatching bread from poor people, snatching bread from the elderly. Yeah. And so I think that, you know, as I said, you know, God is listening. God is listening. And I wanted to read this little verse here, Mr. Franklin, right? And it says, Psalm 140 verse 12 says, I know that the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted and justice for the poor. And that's what this show is about. This series of show is about justice for the poor. That is what Mr. Franklin is about. Justice for the poor, justice for those who are afflicted. He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he set the world on them. Yes? He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. That's God. That's God. And I'm not going to leave him out, I tell you, because let me tell you, a lot of us pray. People were praying. You were praying, right? You were praying. And the people, it's the power of the people. And that's what I really want to get home to Barbadians. Bajans, understand. Don't believe them that you're passive. Don't believe them. Look at what happened. You came together and you made it happen. The numbers mattered. Listen, Mr. Franklin, I got off the show and I went to check. Somebody said, "What are the numbers?" I got up and I looked. There were 2,000 views. Just last night, after I got off the phone of the air, 5 minutes after. This morning, I'm in my garden and I see somebody passing and say, that's a lady there that is on the show. They didn't realize that I saw them, but people are watching. People are watching, you know, and people are sharing and they are joining and they are learning. So as much as you're thanking, we want to thank Mr. Caswell Franklin. We want to thank Miss Maxine McLean, Lynette Eastman, Winston Clark, and everybody who came on here. We want the people. With you, it's you. The power is in the people. It's when the people stand up, the powers fall down. It's you guys. Mr. Franklin, what do you want to say to the people?
I would say to them, thank you, and don't falter now. You know, you told them about the proposed next step.
The next step, no, I didn't even start. I didn't even get there yet. I know for the first 3 minutes, nobody could hear me.
No,
yeah, so go ahead, Mr. Franklin.
But I will leave that honor to you. But, well, I am hoping that when we take the next step, that they support us as well. And this, by supporting us, they are supporting themselves. That is the important thing. Stop letting people believe that you are docile and silly and you will take anything. You know, because all that does for you is give you stress. And stress kills. Because you know you don't like it, but you're sitting down humbly and quietly and hoping that it don't reach you. It will reach you because national insurance reaches everybody if you live long enough. You know, so
yeah, everybody, yeah.
Everybody, you know. I keep telling people that there were 2 pension systems in Barbados before. One for people whose bit was governed by the national insurance rules that you paid for, and then there was one where people used to call it the poor law pension, where people, if they didn't have any means, the government would give them a small pension. I remember back in 1968 when my grandmother started to get her pension. I'm dating my age now, because that was back in 1968. I remember she used to get $13. Man, that $13 in those days could buy stuff. Not a lot, but it could keep body and soul together. When Tom Adams came into office, he changed the pension age from 68 to 65, and he abolished means testing, because people had to investigate you before you got the pension. So if you had a couple of two pieces of land or something like that you want left for your grandchildren, they wouldn't give you a pension because they say you got means. Tom Adams stopped that. I know Tom might be, mind you, if you pass down St. Michael's Road anytime tonight and you hear any rumblings, that's Tom rolling in his grave, because his party, because now he's buried in St. Michael's Cathedral Yard, so he might be in there rolling in his grave now. It can't believe that they have reversed everything that he put in place. Then you're supposed to start asking for means testing again. You know, it is important that people stand up for themselves. We can't do it for them. We can show them the way. We can give you the information that the government should have been giving you and they're not giving you. We can do that for you. But in the end, you have to stand up. If we ask you to stick out. If we ask you to march. If we ask you to do anything, because you are doing it not only for you, you're doing it for your children and their children. National insurance is a very good idea, and it was a very good scheme. The only problem with national insurance are politicians that do not know how to do their job, and they feel that, okay, anything we got money and we will use national insurance money because we have the power. And because they have the power, they're taking that money that's not theirs to spend. You know, it is like you working in a store and you operating the cash register, and because you operate the cash register, you got the money, you're going to spend people's money. Because these people are only supposed to get money and save it and invest it for us. They're not supposed to spend it. And they spend it lavishly. They spend it on their friends. They spend it on their fathers.
I got a post here. I'm not gonna call it any names, but I got a post. But you keep going, and then I will read. Let me find it, and then I will read it. But go ahead.
We cannot allow government to think that we're all fools. And some of us must stand up, because trust me, we don't have the best brains in Parliament. We don't. Maybe that's something what we should be aspiring to. But our system is such that people accept bribes to vote, and if you got enough bribe money, you can attract the votes, because you put some money rolled in a red T-shirt and you are covered. They break every rule to get into office. And why do they do that? Because there is something in there for them: national insurance money, contract money, something. Because I hear people say, "Oh, I could do better in private." Well, go on private, huh? Nobody enforce your hand. Nobody put a gun to any politician and said, "We want you to run." They see they can. So whenever I hear that nonsense argument, but one, we can do better. No, I don't very much. If you wanted to do better, go and do better. But don't try and do better at the expense of the people. Right now, we have a situation where we got three bills now. The Integrity of Public Life Bill. And a lot of people are praising them up, trying to pass it. Listen to me something. They do not want to pass that either. It is not a very good bill, and it will not do a lot of protection and showing people who is corrupt or not. But even that watered down version of Integrity and Public Life Bill, they don't want passed. I can tell you why. I don't know if some of you remember, but when we had the COVID situation, people were supposed to stay home if they came into contact with people who had COVID.
Right.
Lisa Cummings, Minister Cummings, she turned up for the Senate after having been exposed for a few days. Both she and Bostic were exposed. Bostic was home doing business via Zoom, but
Right.
she turned up for it. And some of us walked out. And that was the day when they debated the bill. That bill needs a constitutional amendment majority, 2/3. 2/3 of 2114.
Yeah, they're 2/3 of 21, 2/3, I think so.
Yeah, 14. There were only 13 people in the House, in the Senate. So putting it to the vote guaranteed it's not passing. Because it cannot pass even if all 13 voted yes. You needed one more vote to say yes. So when they put it to the vote, that was an intention. And now they're walking about saying, oh, the independent senators and the opposition senators stopped the bill from passing. Damn true. They made sure it didn't pass because they made sure that they called it when there were not enough people to pass it in the Senate. So this Integrity and Public Life Bill, National Insurance and the Pensions Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, people in this country have to stand up and take note, look at them. Or not. We've been downtrodden for a long time, you know. It's just that some of us didn't know how bad it was. I'm prepared whenever I see it to stand up.
Somebody has a question here, and it says I need a bit of clarity. Suppose I am made redundant and my employment or contributions are broken. What is the likelihood of receiving a pension with this new bill?
This person has mixed up a few things. If you're made redundant, you qualify for severance pay if you had been working for that employer for 104 weeks, 2 years. That has nothing to do with your pension. But if this person that's asking the question is your public officer, there's no such thing as redundancy payments for you. You get your pension. Mind you, the government nowadays have misinterpreted the legislation and the CCJ to say that you got to wait till you reach retirement age to get your pension. So private sector gets redundancy money, severance pay, and private sector people and the public service people don't get any if you send them home. You have to wait until 6, according to them, until you reach retirement age. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have done that. They're blaming it on an amendment that Barrow did. But that's not true. They are just hurting people. And if you know that that error was made, fix it. Don't rely on it to hurt people. So your severance pay and your pension, for instance, your pension now will be based on 750 contributions. That's from National Insurance. So if you have 750 contributions, you will get your pension. And if you have more than that, you'll get an additional bit, top up the more. I can't remember how many more contributions you need to get another upgrade. But the maximum pension for National Insurance is 60%. But that's based on your contribution, so much money you put in. Under the new pension arrangement for public servants, you will become pensionable if you work for 3 years. but the amount of money that you will get will be so pitiful. It ain't funny because you only get 1.67 hundredth of your annual salary times the number of months that you work. Okay, so even though the lower the qualifying period to get a public service pension, you're not going to get anything because and in terms of gratuity, and even so, when you reach retirement age, because the national insurance age and the public service pension age now have coincided, national insurance will cancel out the pension that you will get from the government under the Pensions Act now. But for the vast majority of people in the public service, people who are earning over $5,000 a month, people under $5,000 a month ain't getting no more, ain't gonna get a cent. So this bill telling you, oh, we're gonna give you a pension stuff. They're not giving you a pension. They're giving you the illusion of it.
The illusion of a pension. Wow.
Yeah, you're not gonna get anything.
Yeah,
and
you know, and
all to say, but this is pension reform. I cannot say enough that they lied to the country, lied to everybody when they said that they review the public service pension scheme and realized it wasn't sustainable, that kind of thing. There was no public service pension scheme. There never have been. So I don't know you could do a actual study on it. It didn't exist. So they tell you any lie as long as it sounds good. Ask any of them to produce the document that shows you the pension scheme. They were supposed to do it since 1947 and they never put it in place. So each government had paid pensions from current revenues. So when you pay money to the Treasury, it paid the bills and on them. So don't let them fool you.
So it's not like that it's sitting down. They're paying it from current revenues.
Yeah. Now, what they are doing, instead of them putting it down for you, as they should be doing, they are requiring you to put it down for yourself.
Right.
So public sector will have to dip into their pockets to pay for their pension. You know? And public service, you see, one time public service employment was attractive because you can get a pension down the road and they will give you what a pension basically was a deferred earning. So they didn't pay you. Let's say your job was worth $100. They will only pay you a salary of $75. So that $25 will go into a fund for you to pay your pension. They stopped doing that now. As a matter of fact, they don't do it. They don't put it in the fund, but it is all the provision for it there. So being in the public service now is no big thing anymore.
Yes.
Because they're private sector people who get better conditions. As a matter of fact, there are some people at the airport right now who the government said they want to put them back into the public service because the Arabs don't want them. Because they don't earn any money for the airport. They fix things around the airport. They fix the lights. They keep the airport running. So that is a cost. So what they're doing, they're allowing them to go back in the public service to continue to maintain the equipment at the airport while the Arabs collect all the money. And we will be paying for the people who work and those sections at the airport. You know, the Arabs are only about making money. They ain't about paying out any.
Exactly.
So but why I strayed into that to tell you that but those people have better conditions at Grand Island International Airport, Inc. Than the public service. They have pension plans and they have medical insurance that is not anywhere in the public service. So when you take them back to the public service, they can lose all of that. So the people are not too anxious to go back.
Wow. Somebody here is asking, they're saying, if we keep feeding the pension fund and it keeps going down because of the government always putting their hands in it, what then?
Well, the only thing that you can do is get rid of the government that's doing it. But a lot of people love politicians more than they love themselves. So if you find that they are doing the wrong thing, you must always remember, right? The rich people used to pay the taxes in Barbados to run this country. When I was a little boy growing up, the plantations used to be paying the money. Plantations, the big business and stuff. Poor people hardly pay any taxes because they had no more taxes to pay. Government over time have changed that dynamic and put the burden on the poorest of the poor, saying that they will what they call it, they're sharing something, sharing the burden. But let me give an example. Companies used to pay 25 and 40% tax depending on the level of income. Government brought it down to 5% maximum. Right? But I said they had back at that money. So you tax gasoline, you tax water, and we have people in this country whose water bill was $32. And that was the minimum rate. Not that you use $32 in water. If you don't turn on your pipe for that whole month, you will pay $32. But some people don't use a lot of water. Old man, old woman in the house by themselves, they don't use a lot of water. And government turn around and put a $45 tax on those people. You'll pay more tax than you're paying for the service.
Oh my goodness.
And business took it, you know? And that is raking in the water and sewage, this levy thing that they have. It's raking in the money. But so they took that burden off the people who should be bearing it, because let's talk about a socialist system and the rich would take care of the poor, that kind of stuff. They're not really socialist anymore. There are people who look out for the rich.
I tell you. But you know, go ahead.
I will talk about 2001. I will not tell you the names of the hotels because I got these matters when I was doing my job. I got this information when I was doing my job. And
yes.
I take the information I get at these hearings confidentially. I do not broadcast what I learned at these people's workplaces. Suffice it to say that we had hotels in Barbados, big properties, paying $32 for water. $32. The same as the poor fellow that got one lead pipe in the yard. And the government didn't want to go after them. And when the young lady that I represented went after them, they tried to fire her. Because a hotel property, massive property, can pay $32. And it was not an offense. And you were turning out people's pipe for $80 and that kind of thing. This country looks out, this government looks out for those who have. At Christmas time, they give you a hamper, make you feel mendicant. And election time, they give you a T-shirt and some $100 bill. Mendicant. They want you to be there. They want to keep you poor and begging. And people will run up the place and show all this great love for them, but they're not showing you any love. They are showing you, okay, you're an idiot, so I'm going to treat you like that. That's what's happening in this country, you know. The rich is getting richer.
Correct.
And the poor, they're getting poorer by the day. I have too many people. I see too many people. And I tell you, everybody's coming to Barbados and buying up Barbados properties and Barbados companies and then treating the workers like hell. And the Minister of Labor talks a very pretty talk, but you don't put the legislation in place. The only legislation we want to put in place is to tell people national insurance money. That's the only thing they want to put in place. It is hurtful, especially when I see it. As I said, I cannot divulge because you will not like me to come to your workplace, get information that is your confidential information, and then broadcast it to the world. And I will not do that. But suffice it to say that it is happening. I can challenge them to deny it.
So you said something that we didn't really develop as much over the last couple of evenings. We were talking about this money that was written off, and that a lot of it has to do. Actually, I have a note here somebody sent to me, and I just read the note, and we can discuss it. It says, so Owen didn't just write to NIS, he actually fully stabilized it. Then one bunch of not-knows treated it like a piggy bank and depleted it, while the current lot wrote what was owed off because certain people's fathers owed NIS, then wrote off corporate taxes outstanding because the same people's fathers owed them too. And it goes on and goes on. And they talk about now, after writing off well over $2 billion to save family and friends of both political affiliations, you come to hammer the public with whose contributions were misused and tossed away like chaff, while your own pension structure paid by the Treasury and not the NIS remains unaffected. What are your thoughts about that, Mr. Franklin?
That is completely accurate. That is what has happened in this country, and people better wake up. And unfortunately, you see, not even the opposition is saying it, because what's happened with them is that they will start criticizing some of their people too. See, so they are very careful how they criticize. They don't want this because they come up with trouble and say, but you started and you were doing this here too. So the opposition is not helping you either. I believe they hope this will go away. But the opposition has to come out and show people that they have the interest in the country. And if they've made mistakes, admit them and move on. There's no perfect fellow. I've made a few mistakes in my time. Lord knows I made a few whoppers too. But I have moved on from them. You got to move on from theirs and put some pressure on this government.
So is there in your mind, is there any truth to the fact that to the point that this person made, that the reason that it was written off is to help family and friends? Are these business people?
Now you see, what you need to do is to go into the registration department. There are some big registers, see, 3 feet, about 2.5 feet by to almost 3 feet, and much longer than that. But they're big books. All the judgments are written in this book. And there's one for national insurance, and there was one for income tax, and one for VAT, and one for the credit unions.
Yes.
That's another scam. But the judgments are just put in that book and they're not enforced. We have people who have judgments against them, and then the people at national insurance attempted to put the names in the newspapers that embarrassed them so they would come out and pay. The people on the list were too prominent. They can't embarrass them. They got family ties. So because of that, the public don't know who owe national insurance all these funds. And I doubt very much that the public can just leave the street and walk in the registry and go into it. I did it because I wanted to know. But everyone can do it. So they will tell you. I remember when they were writing it off, the Prime Minister said that these things going back from 1968. Because some people didn't pay taxes from 1968 to 2000. And she's saying because of difficulty in finding the document, the records and stuff, that they're gonna write them off because they're not. That was not true. The records are in some big books at the registration department. They were there. They're still there. They don't throw them away. But that sounds good though. If you see, they tell you that and it sounds good. It sounds reasonable because people say, well, so then they say, yeah, no, you can't find them. No, you can find them. They were there on the big table pilot. But they were saying, oh, because we couldn't find the records and stuff, we had to write them off. That's true. Because there were judgments on the High Court against them that they never satisfied. And they keep a judgment High Court is only valid for 5 years. So what they were doing is just renewing them. Every 5 years, renew them. Rather than force them, they just renew them. Renew. And then they say, but one, they can have the source document. That's true. They had the source document. But people believe that. Because it's, as I said, it sounds good and it sounds reasonable. Because from 1968, Lord forbid, you got any documents that you have from 1968? No. But the registry has. Unfortunately, people believe politicians when the politicians open their mouth. Whether what comes out is true or not. And my experience is that most of it is not true.
So what happens? I mean, at the NIS, do they have a debt collection policy? What do they have, like a department that deals with collecting these, the debts that's owing from these business places? Do they have? How does that work?
There's a section called compliance. They ain't got enough of them. Mr. Strickland spoke to them last night when he said that there is one officer for St. Lucie and St. Peter. You know how many businesses are got in St. Lucie and St. Peter, and you got one officer to do that when the month come? They're not taking it serious.
So you're saying this even within the NIS, the structures that are in there, that it's not the structures are not strong enough to go after the non-compliant.
That is a chronic in the government and government departments. If you look at the Labor Department, as the Barbados who put on the books of Employment Rights Act that a lot of people didn't want. Even the unions didn't want it because it didn't allow them to grandstand and bully people. You had to prove what you were doing. So the unions didn't like it either. But they did not put anybody in place to police the legislation. Or, for instance, let me give an example. You have a Employment Rights Tribunal, 9 people. But 3 people at a time can hear cases. Only 3. You've got a lawyer and 2 other people, one from the employers and one from the workers' side. And they will sit down and they will hear the case and make a judgment. You want to know why you couldn't get your cases, people cases going on 5, 6, 7, 8 years? Nothing to do with the tardiness of the employers at the Employment Rights Tribunal, you know. There was one, I understand that they make a little change now. There was one lady who used to be the subscription clerk and secretary all in one. So she could only service one tribunal at a time, one panel at a time. So 2 cases could not go on at any one time. And we were crying out for years, and government knew it. They did nothing. They didn't put any resources behind the tribunal so they can get the people's business done. This is for poor people that get fired. So they didn't care. And people think these politicians love them. I don't know where they get a madness from. If you had a dog and treated it to be around here.
Listen, you have Miss McLean dying with laughter there. Miss McLean, welcome. Good evening. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Listen,
he's correct though. But go ahead, because I was listening to Mr. Franklin, as I was holding in the background. But if I might summarize some of what I heard, because I wasn't able to join you from the beginning, and
But
I
before
certainly.
you
Mhm.
do, I just want to, as I thank Mr. Franklin, I want to thank you. I want to thank you. You're not hearing, Mr. Franklin? Oh, I don't think he's speaking to her. Okay. I want to thank you for taking the time since Sunday. I know that it's a big sacrifice, but you're doing this for the people. We've come on here. Nobody's pushing any political party or any such thing. We're all here, and you have taken the time and researched, and people are just calling me and telling me that they love the presentations and the offerings of the panel, and I just want to thank you so very much on behalf of the people of Barbados. I want to say thank you. And you can go ahead now.
Well, let me say thank you, and I got a few calls and so on, and it just sent me reflecting. I mean, I cringe when I hear politicians lumped all in, but the unfortunate reality is that we do have issues. But I want to say to Barbadians that it is not by accident I do what I do. You would have been around long enough, Marcia, to probably know the name Wendell McLean. That's one of my former 7 brothers. I'm one of 11 children. And my brother would have given his life for this country. He gave his life for this country. He died a year before he retired as a lecturer at University of the West Indies. And anybody know he spent 30 plus years challenging utility companies around here. And I told people he left 2 things to me. I would never forget. And sorry that I'm talking about myself, but I guess this whole exercise sent me into a very reflective mode. And I remember when my brother got married. I remember when I did his preparing to his eulogy, my sister-in-law said to me that when my brother indicated he wanted to marry her, he told her upfront Barbados was first. And that, to my mind, is indicative of the commitment that he had to this country. So when I do this, it has nothing or very little to do with politics, but to do with the need to fight for the rights of Barbadians. And I've been listening to what has happened, and I'm happy to see, happy and sad in a way, to see that the Senate did not meet today. What I find extremely interesting, but it also is not unexpected, based on what we saw take place in the House. What I find interesting is that the Senate, according to Senator Lisa Cummins, who would have called for the adjournment or the rescheduling. I'm not sure which, if it was an adjournment or the ended the sitting to come back, but she indicated that they were having some internal consultations as the Senate, the government senators, I believe. And then later on, somewhere in what I was hearing today, I heard that there was supposed to be a meeting of senators, with government senators, with the consultant at the National Insurance Scheme. And I think that is instructive and it should be spoken to, because when I spoke about process previously, what I was talking about is the whole need for proper preparation
Mm-hmm.
as senators go to deliberate, as members of the House of Assembly go to deliberate. There's been a tradition, which I suppose I would say a long-standing tradition, where the parliamentary group come together and um, they have their discussions, they dissect bills and so on. And I can tell you what happened. This used to happen in our case on Monday nights, because Parliament traditionally meets on Tuesdays
Tuesday. Mm-hmm.
and Senate meets on Wednesday. And so you talk about the legislation that is coming, you make sure you understand the issues and so on. So what I found perplexing was the fact that you are now meeting as Senate to hear from a consultant to the NIS. So my question was, and I will say this, I can bet you, and I said it, I talked about betting last night. I can bet you that if we did not have if you didn't have this program and had three evenings of the discussions for the public, the Senate would have met and that bill would have been passed today. I am
Mm-hmm.
sure before sunset, senators would have completed their business and gone. Based, and I say that based, I'm not a mathematician. My sister is, my brother was, other members in my family are not me. I'm not a mathematician, but the law of probability, when I look at how the previous sittings have been taking place, what I've seen is that they meet and they end pretty early. So I believe that they would have gone ahead and this matter would have gone and so on. So I am happy to say that perhaps now, when we hear from the Senate next week, we will hear a proper debate, because one, somebody spoke about speeches yesterday because there's no opposition in the House, but we have independent senators, and I trust that they all will sit down and do a serious analysis of these two bills, and whether they choose to use the same strategy as the House and debate them as one debate, that adequate time be spent on those. Having said that, I want now to comment on what I heard when I joined the program, and you were talking about lack of compliance. I made a couple notes here. Issues of failure to enforce, the problem with judgments made by the court or the tribunals. And it set me to thinking. Recently, I was speaking to a relative, and Caswell keeps referring to poor people, because the truth is national insurance is about workers. It's about, providing support for workers. So whether it is your pension, whether it is unemployment benefits, whether it is dealing with severance, all of these things speak to the finances that workers get, whether in the form of salaries, as in the case of severance arrangements are put in there. Things are put in place to protect workers, because an individual worker or herself is not in a position to, stand up against an employer, a large company, even a small employer. The balance of power is not in the favor of the employee. And therefore, that's why they have unions. That's why there are laws. That's why there are certain provisions made to protect them. But, I asked myself, where are we now? And I'm using my strategic management jargon and model of thinking and discussing issues. Where are we now as a national insurance scheme? Because before we can talk about making changes, I think it is absolutely critical that the public be engaged, and this happened in the past and it should continue, engage in looking at what is the situation with the scheme. And as I said, if you were doing a strategic analysis, one of the first questions to answer, where are you now? What is happening? And clearly from what we heard, there is a lot of inefficiency, a lot of significant evidence of the failure of the institution, I would say the management. And I challenge any of the senior managers to tell me that I am wrong. It is the failure of the man. Because we like to talk about politicians, and politicians have a responsibility, but a politician doesn't go into the national insurance scheme or in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where I worked for 10 years, almost 10 years, and tell a PS or a CEO or a director or whatever what to do on a day-to-day basis. I can't go and tell the permanent secretary to go write a check. I couldn't go. My former colleague, Caswell, made reference to Esther Basuku. She was our Minister of Labor. For the most of the time, she was Minister of Labor. She couldn't go and tell the former head of national insurance what to do. In fact, I wouldn't tell you what he used to tell her, because I don't think but he would know the level of support and otherwise, but she couldn't go and dictate to him or what to do on a day-to-day basis. The administration, the implementation of policies and so on fall in the lap of managers, supervisors, etc. So while we as at a policy level, a minister and a cabinet and a government, they have to provide the resources. These resources have to be adequately used. They also have to indicate where additional resources are needed, etc. And the truth is, when we look at this in terms of compliance, we heard last night about from Mrs. Strickland and from Mrs. Moon concerns about what happens on a day-to-day basis. So before we start going to increase, and I'm going through a long route because I think we need to flesh these things out. So before we start going to say we're going to increase contributions or we're going to reduce benefits, and because the population is shifting, yes, but if we allow inefficiency, we are not making the best use of the monies that we collect. We're not making the best use of the staff that we pay. And therefore, I would say to government, tell us what you have sought to do before you start to introduce these changes. And I would hope that somewhere captured in the the term used was revitalization. I'm looking for the minister's statement. The description was, I think it says the revitalization of the national insurance scheme. Yeah, on the revitalization national insurance scheme. So before, as we seek to revitalize, before you get to telling me where you're going and what changes you're going to make, give us solid information on how you have evaluated the persons you've paid. What is their diagnosis, in other words? In beyond the population shifts and all of these things, the reduction in the workforce or whatever, tell us how well you are managing what you are required to do right now. Because I can tell you, based on all that I heard last night and the bit I heard just now, that there are a lot of things that are not being done properly. And therefore, if you can tighten these things up, then you are going to be in a better position to say to Barbados, the problem that we really are facing is 75% of it has to do with a decline in the population and the shift in the payments that we are likely to receive and whatever. But when you're going to tell me that there are people out there owing the national insurance scheme hundreds of millions of dollars, and I used myself last night and I will repeat it. When I left the university in 1999 teaching full time, so that's a long time ago. As a young woman, we decided that some of us, my relatives and a couple of friends and so on, went into business. And there was one business I was involved in. And as I said, because we were slow in paying the benefits on behalf of the employees, the chairman at the time, because he knew me and he knew where I worked, and I would have to go back and see whether it was done according to lawfully or whatever, garnished my salary. I was a young woman, single, working. I didn't have my son, that was long before he was born, but I was working in the university system, and they knew that I had a regular income as an employee. But I was also trying to use my resources to create opportunities for some people to work as well. But I ran afoul of the NIS in terms of the promptness with which I was paying deductions. They didn't come and ask me how the business was doing, but they figured you got money somewhere, you're going to pay. Why is it then that large corporations or individuals who are high net worth persons can get away? And then you come with, as Caswell said, with the nonsense of saying you don't know who is owed. When in fact, one of the beautiful things about the systems that we have had as a country over the years is the records and the files and so on. I tell people, unless somebody seeks to actively destroy your file, once it has not been badly stored and so on, I took the time in many instances when files were brought to me as a minister to go and go back on the file to get a sense of issues. So I might have a file with information going back to the 80s in 2017 or 16. But I could check the information. So this notion about lack of records and so on. So my point I wanted to make, and I took a while at making it, is that before we even go to telling people we're making these changes, and now you come and say, well, they're going to be coming 10 years down the road, or not in the distant future, or not too soon. Because that is the case, there is no reason to tell me that you do not have time to look to fix all the kinds of problems that we have been hearing. And tell us, once you fix those things, hire compliance officers, one person for St. Lucie and St. Peter. Caswell, what kind of salary would that person be making per year? A compliance officer.
You have to unmute, Mr. Franklin.
Unmute.
I don't have the information here with me.
All right, well, let me use a figure. $50,000 a year. Okay. That might be, I don't know what level in the scale that the thing is, but let's use for $50,000 a year. We have 11 parishes. If we had one officer per parish or two, you can realize that one officer, that'd be 11 by 50, that's $550,000, I think it would be. $500,000 for one. If you double it, it would be $1 million. You're talking about an organization which is handling billions of dollars. Why is it that you don't recognize that if you have efficient compliance operations, with officers following up and so on, not only are you getting people to pay it, but remember Ms. Eastman spoke last night about being visited as a young attorney and being encouraged as a self-employed person. So my point is, I'm saying is, you're not only talking about recoveries, but you're talking about a relatively small investment in personnel, in staff, to do a number of things. So my point, I will quit here, is show us the extent to which you have been able to improve operations, to reduce the loss or the inability to collect revenues and these kind of things, to get people to participate as they're supposed to. And then let's start talking about the impact of that and the extent to which that will reduce the necessity to take some of the decisions that you're proposing.
Well, and I think that is so important, because if your compliance structure is not strong enough, what's the point? Because it's going to happen again. If you don't, you're going to have a way of how you're going to get the debt, how you're going to get people to pay. What's the point? You're collecting more money, and we're going to go back into the same old system. Someone, I see people asking, so what's next? And before I allow Miss Eastman to share her thoughts on the announcement today, I want to hear her thoughts about the senators not doing anything today with the bill. I want to say that one of the things that happened on this show, because we don't just stop, but we there's action. The first thing that happened right here on the show is that Mr. Franklin said, let's do a sick out on Wednesday. And some people wrote me and they said, why Wednesday? Let's do it Thursday or do it Friday. But as I saw what was happening today, I know that it put a bit of pressure on these people. There was pressure on them. There was talk in the news. Even this evening, it came up in the news again, because people were wondering what was going to happen. Employers were wondering, and they said, well, a lot of people didn't follow suit. A lot of people came to work. But the point is that I believe that it allows, it says that the people mean business. It really, really, really made a statement. The other thing idea that came up in our discussions was that there be a petition. And I want to thank, I didn't get the permission to say the person's name, but they have already worked up the contents of the petition that I am sending, to a couple of people to just read over. And then you're going to have that opportunity. Everybody will have that opportunity to read the petition and decide if you want to sign the petition. You will see what it's all about. And then the third thing that came up, and people have been talking about it in the comment section, is about hitting the streets. And today we were able to go down to the police, because we're not joking. We're not joking. We went down to the police and handed in a letter, all right, seeking permission for a protest march on Saturday. Now, we don't know if it's going to come through by Saturday, but based on my understanding, the lawyer in our midst can let me know if what I'm saying is true or not. But based on my understanding, you just really need 2 days. It's really 2 days that you need to, in terms of applying for that permit. So that letter has gone down to the police, and if all goes well, then we should be on the street on Saturday. Why is it important to go on the street on Saturday? Because they said they're going back there. The Senate is meeting on Wednesday. And I know that they respond to pressure, and we're going to pressure them. Somebody wrote on my page and said, when you put pressure on in the pipeline, they burst. And you gotta keep applying pressure. Miss Isma, do you think those senators were feeling the pressure of the people of Barbados? Why the whole thing was adjourned? Good night.
Well, good night, and good night to the panel. Good night to everyone. I listened to what the leader of government business in the Senate said, and if you can, the gist of it was that we're not going to discuss the bills. That's the only thing you could really get from it. But she said that there are a number of considerations. In effect, this is what she said, that there were a number of considerations, that there was going to be a separate internal meeting of the Senate to deal with matters preparatory to the bills which are coming before the Senate. Now, so then someone says to me, so what, they're going to debate the bill in private? Because, what does it mean? What does it mean when she says that the Senate is going to meet privately to do what? Strange. The Senate usually meets to do the business of the people of Barbados. I would see the Senate meeting if it had some issues with its procedure or something like this. She's not talking about going into committee. So it was a rather odd statement. And it is unclear really what it meant. What considerations, what were the number of considerations that she was talking about? So the fact that you have that kind of statement suggests to me that they decided that they weren't going to proceed with the bills because of the pressure which they were facing. And I said this on the last occasion, but they also have the Integrity in Public Life Bill before them as well. I don't want us to forget that, because that was a bill that we were calling for the longest time. It passed the lower house, and when it got to the Senate, it failed for whatever reason, because that Integrity and Public Life Bill is very important to the people of Barbados as well. So I do feel that they were feeling some pressure. I don't know if you counted how many senators were there.
9.
9?
Yeah.
9 out of
21.
Oh.
A bare quorum.
Oh. But that in itself says something.
But what do you think it says? Miss McLean, your mic was
yeah, I listened to Senator Cummings, and I listened again. I think one, the pressure came from the discussions over the last 3 days to tell them what you were planning to do, you could not do, and that was to come in there and as I use the word a sham in relation to what transpired in the House, a similar thing. And it is clear that they were not properly briefed, because I'm not sure if Lynette heard, but she made reference, or somebody made reference during the day, to the fact that they were going to be meeting with the consultant from NIS. Now, you were a member of a parliamentary group, and you know the process of preparation for debates in Parliament. You go after being briefed and prepared, and after discussing as a parliamentary group what are the issues, whatever, the strategies for debating and so on. But clearly, if you, and I say history is a good teacher, if you follow the debates in Parliament, the Senate is different because you have independent voices and so on. There are very few people who speak to most bills. There's never a time that I've heard a majority of the members of Parliament, let's say in the House, or a majority of the government senators speaking to a bill, because you can have a lot of people speaking and introducing different aspects of the issues. So I think, Lynette, the problem was that the pressure was y'all can't go and try to debate the way y'all were planning to get this thing over and pass and Colombo your business. So they now have to go and understand what are the issues. And how. So that's my take on that. That's what I heard.
Yeah, they actually met with the committee with Rawdon Adams, the actuary, Director of National Insurance, and somebody else. I can't remember who that person was, and they explained the bill to them. I wasn't there, but I have enough information that would allow me to find out these things.
Explain it before or after?
Let's explain the bill to them. They
When?
After the adjournment.
Oh, after the adjournment.
Okay. Yeah, after the adjournment. They huddle and they get somebody to come and explain it to them.
And that essentially was
what? If this show was not in place, this thing would have passed and the challenge would have gone there and debate a bill that they didn't understand and that pass it and nobody would be wiser. So the country owes Marcia Weeks a debt of gratitude. Trust me.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that you have to bear in mind too is that the bills are supposed to pass the cabinet first.
Yeah, but we know that.
No, right. But so you're telling me that these bills, because remember there's a whole process. Unless they don't follow the process any longer, there's a whole process where the bill starts from within the ministry. A policy paper starts within the ministry. The first thing you have is a policy paper. The policy paper is supposed to be approved by the cabinet. When that is approved, it then goes to the Chief Parliamentary Council, the CPC, then for drafting. So when you get back the draft bill, well, some ministries would send the bill out or have a discussion with stakeholders or whatever. But then it is the draft bill then goes back to the cabinet for approval. And then it will find its way into Parliament. So these individuals, some of the individuals sitting in the Senate also sit in the cabinet. And as Maxine said, it should have been discussed within the party itself at parliamentary group meeting. So all of those stages would make you extremely familiar with the bill. In fact, you should have had at the cabinet level, especially, and in the parliamentary group, where you have representatives of constituencies arguing on behalf of their constituents, freely, without any fear, and fiercely on behalf of their constituents as to the impact that the amendments would have on their constituents. Now, if you had to rush after Senate to have somebody brief you, it means that they did not go through that whole process. And that process isn't there because you like paper. It's because that whole process is supposed to give the members of parliament an opportunity to even have some discussions with their constituents, even if it is to phone a few people. You phone a teacher, phone somebody that working in the civil service. You could sit down and phone up a couple of people and find out from them how it is impacting them. Think about it, and then when you go to cabinet or parliamentary group, you would say, well, I talked to someone and these are his circumstances, and when I look at this bill, this is the impact that it is going to have on him. And you raise these things that those are the kinds of discussions that I know about, that I'm familiar with, and you went through that whole process. I mean, sometimes you leave parliamentary group near 12 o'clock in the night and that kind of thing, debating really if you should go forward with a particular bill or not. And that's what the process is supposed to be. So I find it very strange that at the 11th hour, they will have to have a briefing if the members of parliament went through that process. Even from the party itself.
I want to say something, because that is exactly, in fact, I could even share how it was. There were some additional things done. One of the things that you would find, and Lynette is exactly correct, because one of the things I found myself on would have been a couple of subcommittees of cabinet, because you sometimes found a piece of legislation that was either complex, it was addressing something new or whatever. And there was a process of taking that legislation to a subcommittee where you even dissected it further before taking it to cabinet. And what you would have done there would have been we would have invited some of the senators who were not cabinet members, and they were able to hear from technical people. You would have brought in, let's say it was a matter relating to health, you would have brought in key health officials or whatever the case may be, and you went through that and you fleshed it out, so that when that draft bill went to the cabinet, following the processes that Lynette identified as the earlier processes, you were able then to say to the other cabinet members, these are the issues. And sometimes, even if you felt that the nature was so technical, you would bring some of those technical people to the cabinet meeting itself. So I think, Lynette, what happened this morning was a forcing of the hands of the government, because I believe the Senate was taking instructions, because what we have pointed out in the three programs up to now was that the process by which the bill went to Parliament, the rush with which it was done, the nature of the debate in the House, the debate or the speeches or the presentations. I still have to go back and watch the persons who spoke to the National Insurance Bill, other than the ministerial statement that was given. It didn't connect with the legislation that people have there to scrutinize. And so they were not prepared for a decent debate. And this was showing up. And it would have been totally ridiculous for them to come and speak about something that they didn't know. What Caswell said is that you had to go and hear from, because if you're meeting, if they were listening to the program on Sunday on Brass Tacks, for example, they would have heard the same Mr. Adams was on. I'm not sure exactly how much he said that would have helped them anything. You had the Minister of Labor on. You had, I think it was Mr. Blackman who did it. No, it was David Ellis who did it. David Ellis, who was asking some significant questions and so on. So even if they had listened, it would have prompted them to go and do their research. But what it was that they were turning up ignorant of the details. I am choosing my words carefully. They didn't know what was there, and they could not make sensible contributions. So they had to do what seems to be very prevalent now: wheel and come again. Thankfully, they've done that, but it is embarrassing for somebody who sat in the Senate. I had the honor to have been leader of government business, and we sat down week after week, and we decided these are the issues, who will speak to what. And after, the initial thing where I used to lead off most, ministers, parliamentary secretaries, or whatever, their rules which say who can lead off debates, and people were given the opportunity to do that and prepare. You can go back and check the records and see the quality of debates, because as Lynette said, there was a clear process. I spent time last night talking about process, and this is a big part of the process, because then you pass legislation which has to be implemented. Now, if you know what it is when you debate it in Parliament, heaven help your constituents and the people of Barbados when it comes to implementation. So then somebody can come and say, wait, I didn't realize that was a provision in the bill. Help us, please. I mean, so I think I understand why they had to stick a pin and come back. So we wait to see what will happen.
Marcia, Lynette, and Maxine are talking about the old-time days when we had a semblance of democracy in Barbados. These don't understand what's going on now. We have a Caesar, and all roads lead to Rome. So nobody want to debate and want nothing. This is what we want. This is what must be done. We are living in a dictatorship right now, and that's as simple as it is. So all that nice processes that you used to do before, still on the books, but people take the book and put it in cupboard. And I'll read it. Trust me, we need to take the book back out. But we can take the book back out when there are at least one other person in opposition. One person, at least one. Or not all these nice little things that used to happen before. I tell you, look, when I was in the Senate, I remember complaining that I got the bill the night. My email came about 10, but I didn't see it because I got up to use the bathroom. When I think it was around 2, and I saw this email on my thing, I said, what's going on here? Then I could not go back to sleep. I had to sit down and read the bill so I can come and contribute. The next day, I know I cannot outvote the government to delay debate on the bill. So I had to prepare. I got in there and I was complaining. I said, this is wrong. And while I'm complaining, the marshal stick me in my back and had me want to come to discuss later. You know, that's as bad as it gets. You know, they want to discuss later on the same day, and the marshal get to me while they was complaining that we weren't getting enough notice. And that continues, and it will continue because all roads lead to Rome. And we have one Caesar.
But is it because there's a majority? I mean, they have all the seats. Is that why this is happening? Why the breakdown in protocols? What do you think it is?
It is not the thing about all the seats. It is the management style of the leader. If you can call it a management style. That is the style of the leader. That is not management. Maybe mismanagement style, but certainly not management style. And the leader comes up with an idea, and the idea then is gospel, according to St. Matthew, John, or whoever else. You do not have sensible debates. Look, I get tired. I don't listen to them anymore because, as I said before, when you listen to the debate and you read the bill, you realize that none of the speakers, even the person who is leading off debate, collide with the bill. They don't come anywhere close to it. They talk pretty, and they talk for the hour or the half hour, as the case may be, but they do not address any substance of the bill. Because this is what we have to pass, and we can pass it. You're going to talk something, so you can talk. But people talk what happened in their constituency and all kind of stuff, but nobody addresses what is going on in the bill itself and what the purpose of the bill. They don't know. They don't read them.
You know, somebody here is saying that the note, because I got a note as well that there were nine of the senators that were there. So, okay, this person is saying that there were 9 on the government side and 4 independent senators were present, and not 9 in total. Or were you referring to 9 of the government senators?
I just got the thing that said there were 9. I didn't count them. I only listened to what the reporters told me and what I saw in my email. I didn't count them. I didn't have it. I don't want to count them.
The
Anybody
Yes.
can go on the Parliament's website and look at the videos. There's Parliament TV, so you have YouTube videos and so on. So at any one point in time, there might have been. I think I heard somewhere there were 9 government centers, but there may be others. But at the point in making the decision, they can look around the room. The Senate is a kind of oval type table, and they should be able to look and see. But clearly, all the government senators weren't there, and all the independent senators
Yeah.
were not necessarily there.
There was
But
second. Oh,
there were 9, but there were 9 government senators, and that we believe that obviously they would have been they would have voted for the bill, and I think that is what people were commenting on. We will hope that the independent senators would not vote, but I think they know it would have been a political suicide for them if they did. That's what I really believe. I really believe that. So whether it is 9 or it's 11 or it is however, the point is that they weren't all there, and it was adjourned for some, all the different reasons that we were discussing that they gave us, that they were discussing. Somebody says here, I doubt that they have gone back to learn any facts about the bill, but rather to devise a new strategy to fool the people again. There is no way they could have had any interest in the people knowing the facts, and we're going to pass the 2 bills. Do what you're told. Yes, ma'am. That's what this person wrote. You're saying something, Mr. Franklin.
well, I was just saying that I have a different take on it.
Mhm.
We called for a sick out, and some senators sick out.
Senators decided that they're going. You see, listen. This is what I want to say. Lynette, to Barbadians. It's when we can come together. We see by ourselves we can't do it, but when we come together, look at what's happening on this panel. All different walks of life. People in you guys. Some of you were in politics. I've never been. I'm an arts person. We all coming together, and that is really what is going to happen. All these wonderful suggestions from the people who logged on each night, those who are sharing. It's a coming together of everybody. So cute. Hello. It's a coming together of everybody that makes it happen, and that's what needs to happen when you see the petition, when the petition is completed. And you see it's going around everybody on here. There are almost 500 of you on here. It's important that you share it. You talk about it in your workplaces. You talk about it in your churches. It takes all of us. It's when the people stand up. In Jamaica, we have a thing that they say when Duppy ride you. You use the term Duppy in Jamaica, in Barbados.
Yes, we do.
Yes, and they talk about Duppy on your back. When the Duppy riding on your back, you have to get up and shake them off. You understand? And that is what I feel that is happening. This thing that is trying to hold us down and tell us that we're passive and tell us, all this negativity. But when we're able to get up and shake it off, and when you see that petition, Barbadians, when you see that petition, you share it, you sign it. You sign that petition. It's going to be an electronic petition that is going to be completed, and after we reviewed it, and it's going to go out, and you become lead. You become the leader of this thing. You lead. It's all of us. Then once we get the permission for the protest, we're not going to take you up there to any protest, and we don't have any we don't have any permission. Okay, nobody's going to do that. I believe there might come a time people have to do that. At the moment, we are not going to go out without proper permission. Some of you don't like when I say that. Well, you know what? You could do yours, but we're not going to take people out there and get them locked up. All right? Okay, we're going to do things. The police, they're our friends. The police, they're our friends. Trust me. All right. So once we get the permission, you're going to hear the details of it, And I expect that all of us will come out, bring the entire family, because it affects us all. And it's no violence, because we don't need to be violent. We don't need to be violent, right? No violence at all. We're going to come out and we will listen out for that, because it's important that the momentum. You are talking about the show. The show is just one aspect. The stick out today was one aspect, but we got to build the pressure. The pressure has to build. Lynette, I know you're big on you're big on protest. What are your thoughts about that?
No, I think that's an excellent idea. I hope that the approval comes through. I wanted though to I just want to make the point that the process that we were discussing in terms of getting legislation to Parliament and passing it, and even last night we had discussed, and the night before, we had discussed the fact that the bill had not been circulated in the official gazette as it should. And I know that it is difficult to get people really to understand that there's a reason behind the whole process. Because when you pass legislation, it affects people personally. Every piece that you pass, and once it passes into law, it becomes the law. You can go before a magistrate, for example, and you might be arguing a particular thing, and somebody might even be saying, but that can't be what the legislature intended. But if it is clear, if the language is clear, the magistrate can only interpret it and then apply the law in that way. That's why it's so important for us to go through all these different processes, from policy paper right through to preparing a draft, having the draft approved, circulating it. Because also remember that people say ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, if you're going to say that to people, it means that you have to be very careful about the whole process and make sure that they actually have access to the legislation. Give them an opportunity to know that the legislation is in existence. These things are so fundamental to democracy and the rights of citizens. And I just hope that Barbados is not reaching the stage where we believe that these things are not important, that, we think that you can, there's a reason why you do them, as I explained. And it isn't just because you want to be sitting up late and you want to hear your own voice and that kind of thing. No, there's a reason for it. It helps to protect all of the citizens in the community. So I just wanted to underline that particular point.
Just to people are still on this thing about the numbers, and so it's 9 government senators, and I think that is what Mr. Franklin would have been alluding to. I read the report, and it's 9. They were referring to the government senators because that was the concern. And so it is 9 government senators. I don't know how many of the independent senators that were there, but it's confirmed that there were 9 government senators. And so to the person who is concerned about that, I think it's a matter of those were the ones that we were concerned about. Okay. Now, Mr. Franklin, what is it that we want the government to do with these bills? Why should people sign the petition? What do we want? What do we want? And why are they going on the streets?
We are trying to protect people's livelihoods after retirement, because these bills will devastate it. Right? When you look at the Pensions and Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, they are going to wipe out the pension that you will pay for. You're not going to get it. You will pay into a pension scheme because they're establishing a pension scheme to be administered by the National Insurance Department and the National Insurance Service now. And then time comes for you to get that pension, it will be the government pension or that pension from National Insurance. You're not going to get it because most people don't earn above the maximum insurable earnings, and that is dangerous because mostly when you have people at the lower levels, when they apply for pension from the Treasury, having started to work after September 1975, when they get the National Insurance pension, the pension from the Treasury ceases. Now you are putting in place a situation where now both, but see what happens, sometimes you can retire in public service at 60, 65, whatever. And that pension for National Insurance is at 67. So when you reach 67, National Insurance pension wipes out the pension that you're getting. But when you put both at 68, when you qualify for the government pension, National Insurance is going to wipe it out immediately. So you'll be paying for a pension for God knows how many years and then don't get it. So this have to go back to the drawing board. I am not opposed to people contributing to the pensions and stuff, but at the same time, make it meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
I know things will change because in the old days, going back to 1947, that pension was determined to be a deferred earning. They kept back some of your money and give it to you as a pension and a gratuity. They forgot the origins. You see, when you try to fix things, but you don't know how they work, that's where it causes confusion. And the government went about fixing something that they didn't understand. I don't go my car engine. I might look when the mechanic doing something, but I don't touch it. And this is what this government has done. They went looking into the engine without understanding anything about an engine. They didn't know what they were doing and they messed up. They get instructions from the IMF because every IMF review that comes in Barbados, they tell them, cut public service pensions. And this can't say dope because it would be disrespectful. This Prime Minister just following her instructions. Other Prime Ministers stood up to the IMF and tell them no. You have to remember Sandyford, when they wanted to cut the rate of exchange to Barbados dollar. Sandyford said no. Owen Arthur said no. Everybody said no. You don't have to tell them no, they're going to do it. Because these people running Barbados right now. So between the Arabs and whoever and the IMF or whoever else today, you will be a foreigner in your own land. Because right now, as we speak, I'm representing a number of people who are being mistreated because people come from outside of Barbados, take over their companies, and treating Barbadians like dirt. And the government is facilitating it. The Minister of Labor is not putting any legislation in place to protect workers in this country, no matter what. He sits down there. I don't even say talk pretty quick. You don't talk making sense. He just talks. And people are suffering. Only today, because somebody called Saxon Bob and tell him, Caswell like Levy Department. Yeah, I went to the Levy Department today. A girl, because a young lady got dismissed in March. You have 42 days to do this conciliation process. And the employer made it impossible. I think after you got March, April, May, June, July, 4 months. And I can't make it today because people are second out. I went. I represented her. The employer conceded. So she will get her compensation. They fired her without a cent. And kept 4 months dodging the Labor Department.
Well, Caswell, I understand what that was about because there was someone who put on Facebook that you told the people to sick out and you went to work No, I could I really didn't understand what they were talking about. But I mean, that is such a, I mean, if so, what do they expect you to do? Say that I can't come when you were going to assist somebody? And you know, these are mature people who would put something like that on Facebook and feel that there's some value in saying that. I mean, it's like absolutely ridiculous. And I want to say too
On
that
Facebook.
yeah, they didn't call any names. So I said, what were you talking about? So they told me to listen to the 5:30 news and I would know. But anyway, one of the things too that people tend to come with when you say that you're not supporting these bills, they want to ask you, and they will ask people here listening, etc. So they would say, so we can't let the fund run out of money. What do you suggest? Well, with the best will in the world, even if I were an actuary, I could not possibly know what to do if I don't have the information. How could I know? So like that is a red herring, but it is something that is used in Barbados all the time whenever people raise a concern. Now, you know, if my foot hurting me, I will go to the doctor and tell the doctor that my foot is hurting. The doctor don't say to me, so what you would do about it? No, he has the information. He's going to get the test and he will make a recommendation. Not that I can't make one too, because maybe it happened before and I could make a recommendation too. But this notion that people in Barbados cannot register a concern about something because you can't fix it is a joke. So everybody now must become an actuary and say exactly how the pension scheme can be reformed, etc. So I don't want people to be daunted by people making that comment. And also the points that were made earlier about the fact that we're concerned with how the fund is managed, the administration of the national insurance, the fact that money was taken out, the fact that the structure that they have now looks to me like they want to take out more money. That proposal that public when private sector projects come for public sector funding, that somehow they're supposed to come to the national insurance, like if it's enterprise growth fund. That is very worrying to me. And every time I get an opportunity, I'm going to talk about it. Because when these things are going on, we're not going to know, you know. It's going to be a board decision and we're not going to know until well after. So we need to make it very clear now, and maybe that's one of the proposals that should be in the amended legislation, that the fund should not be used for those purposes, not in that way. Not in that way.
Marcy, if I could, and I want to strengthen and reiterate the point that and Lynette, sorry, made just now about what will we do. Our task is not to say, and even if we could do that, but our task up front is not to say what to do. Our purpose, certainly my purpose for engaging in this discussion for the past few days, is to say that we need proper explanations in respect of a series of things. And I go back to where are we? Before you can make some recommendations, you have to demonstrate the people who have the responsibility to make the recommendations. This is the current government or anyone coming in the future. We want to be assured by those charged with the responsibility for improving or making recommendations that they have done or they are operating on the basis of well-informed positions, that they can demonstrate to us that they have information which says this is where we are, these are the issues, this is why, these are the factors contributing to these problems, these are the solutions that we are proposing based on our demonstration to you that we have sat down with our technocrats, with the public, and so on, and we have come up with a set of recommendations. So we need information. So it is about telling us that you're doing so. The question is why, to what are the explanations for, or the causes of these problems and so on? Because to come and tell me you're doing something without telling me what the problem really is and what are the elements of that problem, and how, when we do first of all, that we seek to correct the current things before. Caswell kept saying on multiple occasions, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. No, nobody is saying that the NIS scheme is perfect. We know the problems. And I want to go back, because I went and I looked at the point you made about private sector. There's a reason why there's a reason why you have investment rules and an investment committee and so on. Pension funds are, and the word was used last night, are traditionally invested in a relatively conservative manner. Now, we have complained and people have queried putting funds into things that benefit Barbadians. The reality is, when you use those funds, there have to be returns on those funds. But if Joe Billionaire comes to Barbados as a private sector person or a local Barbadian, goes and says, I have a private project. I want to raise $500 million. I want to raise $300,000. $300 million or $20 million or whatever it is. And this looks good. And we should get it. As you said, those decisions with changes to this corporatization can be made in a much more opaque manner than is happening now. And as was pointed out, yes, there's a concern about the role of and the power of the minister. But remove the minister, remove the cabinet, have a cabinet appoint some people that the public may not want to have as members of the board, and they can go and do whatever they like with our resources. So we talk about, but I had the opportunity to serve on a number of private sector boards, and I know how business decisions are taken and so on. So we want to take something that is bigger than most of these entities and put it in the hands of people that we don't know. The private sector tries, certainly the public companies that I would have served on for the most part. They need to they operate by rules too, But when you want to go and move the rules from what we consider perhaps not good enough to something which I almost can tell you, based on what we've seen and heard or we've read so far, and the promises or the suggestions made in the 2022 budget presentation, that we will probably find ourselves sitting and looking on, watching what's going on and not having much of a say, and then wondering when a project fails, because business is about risk. And that is why there are guidelines about investing pension funds and so on. So I think that the big problem is when people come and say, what would you do? What I want to do, and we are doing now, is to say to the public, stand up, open your eyes and ears, and demand a level of engagement on the part of the people who are going to pass legislation. Lynette explained clearly, when something goes into law, what the implications are for us. So we can't wait till a law is made, and we start to see that it was poorly done and the consequences are disastrous, to say to pull it back. We are drawing people's attention to the problems that are possible and demanding. And I would say, coming out of this, the point I'll make and stop is that we as citizens should be saying to all persons, current and future politicians, and members of cabinet and parliament and so on, that we are calling for some minimum standard of engagement. And if you're talking about parliament, a minimum standard of debate where people come and well prepared are able to share information that truthfully and honestly and clearly help Barbadians to understand why a piece of legislation is being passed, what are the implications of that legislation, how it is going to make things better and so on. And that you have really spent the time to understand and come to a position that this is what will help. There's a process where the Attorney General has, and this wasn't mentioned specifically, But there's a process where the Attorney General, as the chief advisor to cabinet and government and whatever, signs off on a piece of legislation before it goes to Parliament to say that this is fit to be taken to Parliament and to be passed and signed into law. And there's a process that has to go through to enable that individual in that position to do that. But it seems as though I use the word cavalier, that there's a very cavalier approach. And to my mind, the last point I want to make in terms of this contribution is that in a situation where you have no opposition, I think that the government, notwithstanding the leadership style of an individual, the government, and the government includes the other 29 people in this case, who should be able to stand up and say, look, we have a moral obligation to demonstrate to the country that we will not misuse the power that we have, that we will bend over backwards to ensure that we demonstrate to the public that we are taking what we are doing seriously, and that we accept and understand that with when they say much is given, much is expected, that you therefore have to double your efforts to show the people that you are doing what you're supposed to do rather than not turn up. You look at some, since we were talking about numbers, people were sending me the clips from things. But when you go back and do a content analysis of the previous parliamentary debates and see how many people on an average day are present. Go and do a content analysis of the actual speeches made and see how often people connected with a piece of legislation. Not only how much they spoke, but how much or the quality of the contribution and how it connected with the legislation and how it served to help us to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So I think that these are the kinds of things that hopefully we will remind the authorities, the government, the parliamentary group, that you have a moral obligation, and your moral compass should tell you that that obligation is serious and that you live up to it and not disrespect the people who are relying on you to make decisions that will help us as a country.
Yeah. No disrespect. Yeah, go ahead.
I have some good news for you. You know, yesterday Lynette spoke about the process of publishing the bill so that the people in the country can see it and stuff. Well, it was supposed to be passed in the Senate today, but it was published, the bill that was supposed to be circulated, you could see, it was published in the official gazette today. I just, you know,
okay.
So they would have been sending it out to the public for the public to see after they have passed it.
After they have passed it. Listen, Barbadians, listen to what Mr. Franklin is saying to you. So this was supposed to have been in the Gazette before it was brought to Parliament. Am I right? On Friday?
No. You put it in you lay it in Parliament first. Then you do they call it first reading, and then it should go off to the printery for printing.
Right. For the Gazette. But go ahead.
So when you send it for printing, it comes to the Gazette. Everybody sees it. People can send and say, "Well, look, this is wrong. This is right. We shouldn't have this." But they're publishing the bill after the fact. So you do not know. It is something like saying, "This is what the government is going to do for you." That is what the bill is supposed to be about. But it's passed already. And they've done that too many times, and I complain about it too many times. You know, but today I just
disrespect.
While my thing was speaking, I just pull up my official gazette, and I saw here it is. Right, it only published today. Today it says Bridgetown, Barbados, 2nd of August, 2023. Yeah.
Again, pressure. Now, Lynette, it's called pressure. We are talking about it and people are asking them for it, and they hear us talking about, we're asking the question, where is it in your official gazette? And they decided to put it in today after they were supposed to pass it in the Senate. Do you guys realize what is going on? the pressure, and we have to keep the pressure up. If you're just joining us, the petition is being sorted out. You're going to see that on social media. You might get it in your email. Sign it. Don't take your foot off the lever. Keep the pressure going. We're trying to get out on the streets. Listen, the worst thing that they don't want any demonstration. They don't want nobody on the streets, man. You know, Mr. Franklin, they're scared of that. They don't want anybody on the streets because we're saying to them, listen, if we have to wait till we are 60, 68, right? And I know we have former politicians on here. They need to wait too. Then that 50 need to become 68. That's what I am saying. I'm a lay person. That's what I'm saying. They can all tell me all if you believe that. This is some of the things that we want. Right? No, you're in this thing together. You're in it with us. So make us all suffer together.
The government is behaving like a private sided insurance company. You know, the insurance company hope that like the medical insurance, they hope that you don't get sick, you know? And as soon as you get sick, they say, well, you get too sick too often, we can cancel the thing. And for years, you've been paying that policy. They only want to make money. But mind you, this thing is strange. You know, because we have two bills. Don't forget, we have the National Insurance Bill and we have the Pensions Bill. In the Pension Bill, National Insurance now would be taking care of the government pension that used to come from the Treasury. So you're going to be paying money into National Insurance to take care of your pension. Mm-hmm. But in the National Insurance Bill, no member of the National Insurance staff will be able to access that pension. The government will say that within 2 years, they have to get a private pension plan. That's to put money out there in the French hand again. You know, this is madness. You have a pension scheme. You have just developed one and said, well, National Insurance will run it. But not a single member of National Insurance staff could benefit from it. Why not? Why don't you call it a public service pension plan and everybody in the public service, statutory boards and government companies pay into that fund? No, you want to take it out and make sure some people in the private sector get a little deal. This is everything this government does is to make sure that their friends make money. It is there in the bill. Check it out and you will see it says within 2 years of national insurance becoming what this new entity, they will have to. They are already in the government service pension arrangements. You know, they're taking them out.
Yeah.
Why take them out?
Why
are they doing that?
What would be the rationale for that? I mean, sometimes you can argue both sides. So what's the other side you would argue?
You have to have a deranged mind to have a rationale for that. I cannot give you rationale for that. It does not make sense.
But you see, Marcia, this is the problem. There are things in there, none of that was touched. And this was the point I was making. We had a bill, the National Insurance and Social Security Amendment Bill, where the bulk of it spoke to the reorganizing details. As I said, it spoke to the legal structure, it spoke to human resource matters and so on. None of that was really treated not even with, it was just I can't even say glossed over. So you had a bill. Now, Caswell just pointed out that particular feature of the bill. And when I read it, I was like, why is this happening? I mean, well, I think I understand what you're saying, but I'm not an actuary. As I said, I have to ask my sister, one of my sisters, she's one of many, many years. When she wanted to get a job in Barbados, she couldn't get one, but that's another story for another occasion and place. But what you have is something there. I mean, there's so many things in there that need to be explained. So I am hoping, well, that we will get that. But I just want to ask a question quickly, Caswell. When you mentioned the matter of the Gazette, because it is the standing orders don't say that you may do it or you may not. You're required to post the matter to the Gazette, and it's supposed to be posted before the second reading in Parliament as well.
A reading should not happen unless it is published.
Right. And so my question is, if, for example, we had not raised this matter and it was not drawn to the public's attention that the bill was not gazetted and it was debated and passed, and then I discovered, or you or Lynette discovered, that it had never been gazetted, what was the status of that piece of legislation?
Now, what they will say is that the Parliament can suspend its standing orders, and they will suspend it.
In relation to the Gazette too?
Well, you see, but I don't know. You have to argue that in court. But not again.
That's a good question, though. That's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I had researched it at some point, and I was really trying to find that requirement in legislation, and I didn't find it.
Okay.
I didn't find it.
It's in the standing orders, and it is in the Law Made Simple book, because it's one of the first things they teach you when you study law.
It's one of the things that they teach you for sure, but is it that it is part of the parliamentary system that you have that is not necessarily written down in the Constitution or anything like that?
You see, our laws are not only written down; we have conventions, because we come from a system. Our system comes from England that does not have a written constitution, and there.
So I'm thinking it's a convention,
right? The problem here is that in Barbados, even when it's written down, or when there's case law to it, they ignore it. Case in point, if Parliament passes law for the peace, order, and good governance of Barbados, and even if Parliament delegates that function by subsidiary legislation to a minister or to somebody else, that must come back to Parliament one way or the other, either through affirmative resolution or negative resolution. Affirmative resolution means they go to debate it first. Negative resolution means they put it in there, and if nobody objects, it's law. The courts in Barbados have decided that they ain't gonna bother with that anymore. And they had case law going back to 1610 that says no, it has to pass through Parliament. You just, because you cannot make a law and not tell nobody about it. And if you make a law and don't pass it through Parliament, you don't tell nobody. And they did that through COVID. You know, up to this day, not one of those COVID regulations have been published in the official gazette. I mean, been passed through Parliament. Not one. I tell you, we have a Caesar.
Well, that's a whole different story. During COVID, there was a physical lockdown, and then you couldn't say anything either. You couldn't talk without people attacking you.
You went to Parliament. They insisted that you would go to Parliament. As a matter of fact, a day I walked up because they called me to Parliament to debate an order that St. Clair forgot to do, and some other nonsense that was 3 years old. It was an order he made. I know it has to be laid in Parliament and approved. It wasn't laid, so they brought for me to 3 years later. I said, but I come in a few weeks. You bring me here with people masks on their face and now people coughing, and you can tell me what you want me to say here. So they did. So even the lockdown didn't stop them. They met. They still met. And in the house made provisions that some people could stay in the house and some could stay home. As long as you had a quorum in the house, the rest could stay home and contact from there. So they can't have any excuse. Mind you, there's no provision in the Senate as yet. So when you see those missing seats, they won't stick out.
So you know, go ahead.
No, I was wondering about those persons who have reached retirement age and are receiving pensions, because sometimes I get the impression that they feel that all is well. But if you're making adjustments to the fund and you don't improve the governance of it, well, then one day it may come to the existing pensions as well. That's what I'm thinking. If you can change the conditions under which, for example, I entered the NIS and I was told certain things, and you can change them now. Why wouldn't you be able to change the pension that the person is receiving?
Very good point. Very good point. Because, mind you, I'll tell you why. One, what it says is a very good point. When you have contracts, people have a contract, and they're working on these contracts, and they want changes because get your permission, or after they make changes, the changes apply to new people coming in. Same. That's what happened in the pension arrangements for 1975. Because then Prime Minister said, or many unions were saying, but no, this is unfair. He said, well, and they were fighting. He said, well, look, you're not fighting for anybody that is not already in the system. You only fight for your members. And I'm going to legislate for people who ain't get here yet. So the point that you made, that it was recognized that your conditions remain the same until, and for new people to change. But we have a new dispensation now. They're changing everything. No, whether you like it or not, they don't have any regard for what is nice and what is decent and what is proper. They just do what they want to do because they have the power. They have all 30 seats. You only need 20 to change the constitution. They got 30.
Well, yeah, that's the problem that we have, because even if one were to argue that changing the conditions amount to deprivation of property, all you have to do really is to pass it using the appropriate majority in both houses. So basically anything really can be done. And I think that there may be some people who are not paying attention because they figure, well, it doesn't affect me. I retired already and I'm getting my pension. But I'm sure that I don't see any reason that they couldn't be changed. To me, they could be changed as well. So I think all of those individuals need to be paying attention. This is a national issue. It's not something that's just affecting, people who are approaching retirement. It affects everybody, including people who are already getting their pension and retired. Their conditions can change as well. Right. And wow. You know, the difficulty too is that I had a conversation with a young man about 2 weeks ago. So I was talking, because when I meet clients, I try to get an understanding of who they are, what they do, and all that kind of thing. So he's an artisan, and he was telling me how he makes money and that kind of thing. And I said, so you sign up for national insurance? That's one of the things I asked him. So he kind of looked at me because it looked as though he hadn't thought about doing it. So I said, no, it's something you should do. You can work out how much you're paying, and you're just paying, and don't worry about it. Keep paying in. Sometimes you might not be able to pay in at a particular point in time if things aren't going good, but you pick back up and you keep paying in, and when you get old, then you will have you have some kind of pension coming to you. But to be honest, no, when people hear all of this, when young people hear all of this, because I'm thinking myself that if I had seen him in the coming weeks, if I were going to see him, I don't know that I would enthusiastically say, so you're paying into the national insurance. So I'm thinking that this is going to have an impact on even younger people coming in, and people encouraging them to become a part of the national insurance scheme. which then puts us in greater problems if you don't have younger people
Right,
signing up.
coming in makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
No, you see, there are other issues, and we have to try in Barbados to look at things holistically, because you see, there's a push to encourage people to be self-employed. Now, the National Insurance Scheme benefits from having employees, where hopefully the money would be deducted, the money would be paid over to the National Insurance Scheme, instead of having an individual who has to fill out the forms themselves and work it out and then go there, and they're too busy because they're busy building a house or something, and they didn't have the time to do it. So the scheme does benefit from employees, but there seems to be this push to get people to be self-employed. There's a push to privatize a lot of things, and a lot of government agencies, which would just excuse me a second.
Yes, no problem. Yeah.
Marcia, while you wait for Lena, I regrettably I have to leave you at this point in time. But what I would want to leave by saying, I'll leave my last comment before I leave, is that I believe very strongly that the National Insurance Scheme has served us very well. There perhaps is need to revisit the benefits, etc., for self-employed persons, the whole way in which they do that. But I would not say to a Barbadian not to participate, because at the end of the day, you have to ask them, how do you prepare, for your retirement, etc. It is a scheme that has worked significantly. It has issues, but I believe that those issues can be treated and addressed seriously in a way that will ensure that the scheme can continue to benefit. What we are seeing here is a rush to make changes without being able to say to the public, this is how we rationalize or justify these changes. This is what we have to do. This is how we have sought to shore up the system, improve in the present the things that are weak, and to ensure that these things do not continue into the future, even with changes. So I tell people to continue to support it, and we have to stand up and ensure that it works to the advantage of all of us. But let me just say thanks for having me, and I will try to listen. But I have to leave at this point in time. So I want to say thanks to all of those who join us, and for us who have been willing to share our thoughts on this. I think it is important, and hopefully this kind of thing will continue, and we will see other people willing to. I consider it a public service, to give of their time and effort and knowledge. All right. So have a good evening, everybody.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ms. McLean.
Have a good night.
Yes, thank you so much. I see Mr. Clark has joined us. But Lynette, let Lynette finish. Yes, Lynette wasn't finished. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So I just want to make the point. There's a move towards privatization, reducing the public service, and putting things off into companies or providing contracts to individuals. Now, before this was being done, there has been a campaign now for several years, probably for a couple of decades, to try to say that the civil service does an exceptionally poor job, which is, in my experience, isn't true. I've worked both in the public sector and in the private sector, and both have challenges. The larger the private sector entity is, the more it starts to to have the difficulties that you see in the public service. That's my experience. But there's been a campaign on against the public service for a very long time, even though the public service has benefited many Barbadians and has helped to create that middle class that Caswell was talking about. The other thing is that I don't think a lot of Barbadians recognize that the assets within government actually belong to us. Those are our assets. Those are our ancestors' assets from putting in the small amounts that they've had to build whatever it is that we had, whether it was the oil company or insurance company or bank or whatever, all of us contributed to that. And that process continues now. We're no longer going to be the owners of a number of things, a number of services. This was talked about, a number of services to go to the private sector. A lot of those public sector jobs are not going to be there in the future. If people then are on short-term contracts, are they going to feel as comfortable as a person who is an employee paying into the national insurance scheme? I mean, and even if not feeling comfortable, there requires some level of administration. And maybe there's something that could be addressed as well to reduce the amount of administration that a self-employed person needs to engage in order to be a member of the scheme and to contribute to it, how they have to fill out forms and that kind of thing. So what I'm saying is that we have to have an overarching policy, because all of these things then, they all fit in to the other things. So if you are going to reduce your ability to get funds into the NIS because of a particular policy that you have concerning privatization, reducing the number of employees that you have, the scheme as created is going to have a challenge going forward. The other thing is that in terms of continued development in the economy, we're not seeing the projects getting off the ground that would actually create a number of employees to start paying into the scheme, as we have had in the past. And I think we can't expect industries necessarily to stay, because, for example, we remember we had Intel that employed a number of people, but that was there for a time. And it is, to me, it's nothing to cry over. You go and get more business from wherever, but you have to have a number of jobs for employees, I think, in order to help to sustain the fund. So I think all of these issues we have to look at. Otherwise, we might find that the fund then is always in trouble. And I would want to reiterate the point that because you have your pension and you're retired and it's coming to you every 2 weeks, that may not continue if it is found necessary to, increasing contributions to 500, from 500 to 750, that's a huge increase all in one go. So I think people have to be prepared. And as I said, this is a national issue, not just for people nearing retirement, because young people might say, oh, well, all that will get sorted out by the time I get there. And it is an issue for people already retired. So I think that's the point that we need to make, because we need to get as many people as possible understanding that this is a national issue, and it is an issue which is going to affect practically the whole country, well, the majority of the country, hopefully not in a negative way going forward, but no, it is poised to affect us in a negative way.
I hope you realize what good points you've been making.
Yeah.
When I tell you, because you've talked about these contracts that people are engaged in, even government is doing it. Government breaking every rule and hiring clerks and putting to work in ministries and tell them they are contract employees. They don't work for themselves. They're subject to all the rules of the organization. They're subject to, they get vacation, all kind of stuff. They can't bring in their own staff, and government have them in there because the IMF don't want you to pay out so much in contributions. You see, the IMF is marching its scheme at one thing and then telling you how to fix it the next, because they are insisting that government put these people on contract. You put them on contract and do not pay national insurance contributions for them. And some of these people are diligent. Mr. Balanas, I mean, if I don't pay my contributions, I am not going to get any returns when I get older. So they go to national insurance and say, I want to pay as a person. And national insurance tells them, sadly, you are not self-employed, so we can't take your money. So they are between a rock and a hard place. I know of several people who have done that and they were turned back by national insurance by saying, but you are not self-employed.
Are you serious?
I am serious as a heart attack. You know, and this is what has happened. Government is doing it. Even all those people who you saw that were employed for the National Assistance Board that were go and sit down with old people and keep looking at me during the day and that kind of thing. 450.
The home help.
Not the home helpers, they got some companions now. Who got to go and, none of them were paying contributions. No contributions being paid on their behalf. The people who clean up the ash and clean the streets and that kind of stuff, no contributions.
Yeah,
The government's making sure the national insurance scheme does not get any funds on one hand, and then come along and the other side, people got to get more funds for better people. The government is inconsistent. They don't know what they're doing, and they're doing it anywhere.
This is some great points here, because I mean, when you really think about it, everybody's going to be affected, even those who are, you know, presently getting their pension, because if this is what is happening, you're not getting any, the funds are not coming in, so it's bound to happen all over again. Oh my God.
You can't get blood. Don't have them got no blood in it, you can't get out some. The problem is that the government taking dictates from people who don't care about Barbados. They look at a balance sheet and they say, well, you're going to trim here and you're going to trim here. Not realize that when you trim here, that trimming is a person.
Yes.
There's children and a family life. IMF don't see people, they see numbers. Government is supposed to see the people and to say, no, we are not doing that. Yes, we need your help, but we can't take your help under any circumstance. These people just cave in and let the government, let the IMF.
Caswell, I think also you have to bear in mind that the individuals who come representing the IMF, we talk about the IMF as though the institution is coming. There are people who come, and these people have their perceptions about what should be happening in a poor, small, developing Black country. And there are certain things that they believe that we shouldn't have.
Yeah, like free education and
yes, and they've always expressed concerns about those things as if we didn't work hard to build them up, the healthcare and the education. So, I mean, for example, when they set up the Millennium Goals, I mean, most of them we had met already. So remember, as an individual that's coming, so when we believe that there's a certain standard that we need to meet for our people, they're not looking at us like that. They don't see us like that. They don't see us like that. This is a poor developing country that doesn't have any resources. We're not supposed to be able to do the things that we've been doing for all these years through sheer hard work. That's what it has been, sheer hard work and discipline. But if Barbados becomes indisciplined now, and you know that's why I made the point too about the process. That process that you go through, there's a reason for it, and that discipline has held us in good stead, even though sometimes I rail against it. In terms of people feeling that they're exercising the discipline. But all that's part of the process. I will rail against it. Maybe it'll be improved a bit, but the fundamental discipline that we have exercised and most of the things that we have done in the past That has to continue. Otherwise, the whole place can shackle out. We don't have the resources that other people have. I mean, like Trinidad could do certain things and laugh because you know there was a time when Trinidad, for example, used to export a lot of juices. They could go back to growing those. We used to buy a lot of juices from Trinidad. Jamaica too. Jamaica has a lot of resources. Guyana, and anytime they want to wheel and come again and do something else, they still got resources. Barbados doesn't have those resources like Guyana. So the thing that has kept us going is sheer hard work and discipline. We can't afford to do the things that other countries do. We have to be disciplined. So if we don't keep being disciplined and we think that certain things aren't important anymore, you know, I'm sorry, but it's all going to come to naught because that is what has kept us. That's what has kept us going. The way that we do things.
Yes. You know, this is so interesting for me. I'm telling you the truth. Very interesting. Winston, you've come on. Thank you so much. And anybody, if you want to come on, I forgot to put the link there. Did I put the link as yet? But in our next, we have another 20 minutes. You are free to come on and to make your comment, and also to you can ask your questions as well. So I want to say to ask Mr. Clark, listening to everything been said this evening, we're talking here about a petition that came from the people. That was the idea that came from the people, because this show, that's all it's about. We're serving the people. And they've been pushing all of last night. People just been talking about petition. And so we're working on the petitions. Someone from the people said, listen, volunteer, I will create the petition. Is there what's the benefit of that? Does it make any sense? Somebody's saying it should go to the president. Where is it going? Do you believe this petition will make any sense? And what should we be asking for in this petition?
Good night to the panelists. Good night to everyone. Well, as far as the petition is concerned, I can remember we had a petition relative to the Bajan mandates, and nothing was done relative to that. However, there must be a certain number as far as the petition is concerned. And I believe Caswell will correct me here. There has to be 10,000 in order for it to be debated. Is that correct?
I'm
not sure.
I don't think, do we have that in our legislation? I don't recall. We don't have that in our legislation, as far as I recall. Anybody else out there can correct us.
I think there is, because they have done some reading on it, where you are either get a sitting MB or you take it to the
oh, you mean a private members, so that it could be done by a member, and it would be a private members motion or something like that. Okay.
But if we want to, we can take it to the president, because after all, the president is the person who has to sign off on the bill if it is passed. All right. But a lot of people are discouraged because of the detractors. And I want people not to be discouraged, because as long as we stand focused and unite, we can accomplish anything. Or Joseph Stalin made an example where he took a chicken into the Politburo and he pulled the feathers out, left it tattered and bloodied, and took a piece of bread out of his pocket. And that same chicken he had mistreated followed him and ate. And he told the Politburo, this is how we can treat the people. This government is doing this very same thing to the people. And I want you all to remember this. Remember during the COVID period, where people were complaining about the medication they were getting at Harrison Point and how it was counterproductive. And the PM came on to television and said, y'all complaining about medications, Someone that can't even get it pronounced. I remember that. I will never forget that. And it
I
showed
remember
me
that.
it showed me the way she thinks of the people of Barbados, if you all remember that. And they keep belittling us with partying and handouts because that is what we accept. All right? We need, if we keep with the mindset of the detractors, a lot of us will still be sitting in the back seat of the bus or still be using colored bathrooms. We can't afford to let that frustrate us or discourage us. All right? I'm asking that as many people as possible place their names on the petition. And not only that, if we get permission for the protest march, as many people as possible come out. I'm going to do as much advertising as possible. All right? But these things, if we could keep bombarding them with the pressure, Marcia, if we could keep bombarding them, they will have to give in because we are the people and they work for us. I am exceptionally happy that Miss Eastman is here to grace us with her knowledge. All right. I love the fact that I've been able to listen to her and Caswell through these past couple of nights. And I would have learned quite a bit, I'm telling you, right? And I thank you. I would have had the chance to speak to one of your staff. And I know for sure that you didn't open your offices because your staff member told you shut down. You shut down today. So we are aware of that. All right. And we're not going to let anything frustrate us. Caswell is a very, very determined and outspoken person. And I look up to him. I have the highest and utmost respect for him. All right. And if he's behind something, I will go to the end behind it. I'm telling you. All right. And this is a very, very serious thing that we're facing. And it has consequences for the young, the middle-aged, and the elderly. All right. This is all I have to say. As you can hear, my voice is going. I've been consistently bombarded with calls. All right. So I've been going for days now on end. All right. Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everyone. All right. And just keep the fight up, Marcia. You are an unsung hero. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can take for that voice, but I cannot tell you on.
Thank you. Okay, I was muted. My mic was giving me trouble, but thank you so much, Winsome, for what you shared and just for the encouragement. You know, when we send things, you're sending it out. That's the thing. We all do different things, and that's how united we stand. Somebody put that there. You know, in the comment section. United we stand, divided we fall. And I hope we remember this. When the petition comes out, the numbers matter. Numbers matter. Representation matter, and it numbers. You know, so it's important that you sign. It is important that you come out to the protest march. And you might say, why are you doing it so quickly? You don't have enough time to advertise. You have to remember, look at what we're facing, what we're being faced with. By Wednesday, they're going now to debate it again. It's going to go to the Senate, right? It's going to go to the Senate by Wednesday. So that is why Caswell said today was a sick out, and you said why now? We can wait and do it a different time. No, we had to go today because it helped to add pressure. It's about adding pressure. You see, so it's important that we work together. We work together. Don't stay home if the protest is happening. Don't stay home. Anything you see come out on the protest, share it. Okay, and the petition as well. Caswell, as we're coming down. We're coming down another 15 minutes or so. What do you want to say to the people about what should we be saying? What is it that we want to happen? Is it that we're saying put back the age to 67? And are we saying to the politician, come down to 67 with us? What are we saying? Are we saying that the contributions need to get back up to 500? Because really and truly, I think Orville is who put it in the chat. When I did it, he's right. It's a 50%. Why so high? 50% increase in the contributions. Why so high? Can we negotiate 25, or should we go back to 500? What are we asking for, Caswell?
Look, 500 was adequate and has always been adequate. It was adequate from 1966 till now. The problem is they want to delay you getting your pension as much as possible. And what will happen here, you have people, when I worked at National Insurance, I encountered a lot of people who had 499 contributions, 460, some kind of things, and they did not get a pension. They had them to rely on the welfare department and family for a living. Sometimes, let me show you something, see? You might not be very employable, and you get a little job here. Next thing, people lay you off, you go and work, then you don't work for a couple of years, you get a little something else. And then people say, oh, it's only 14.4 years. No, sometimes people don't work that much. But what are you going to do? Let them fall through the cracks? Because we must take care of our brothers and sisters. We must take care of each other. You know, look. I see the Muslims have something they call zakat. And the poor Indians, the poor Muslims, they benefit from that. This is when you make interest or whatever, or on the things that you lend or sell or whatever, they don't keep the interest for themselves. They give it to the poor. They have that. They take care of that. We don't have any such thing in Barbados for among our people. So we had to provide for it. So you can put people in the arms house, but they don't have the arms houses anymore, really, because they shut them down. Because each parish, remember, the boy had an arms house. Then they call them different hospitals. Then they call them places to put convention centers. But you don't have that facility. Everybody will not be able to meet the 500 contributions or the 750 now. But because you don't meet them, what will happen? It's a message to not fall to one. Right? So I don't understand why you are going to penalize people who couldn't do better. Leave it at 500.
But why, if a person is, if the person has made contributions, why couldn't you have a prorated pension?
That is even better. That's saying none at all. Because let's do something, see? We have situations where
I know if I went to court, I don't, because that seems wrong to me. It just seems wrong. It can't be right that because you didn't make the threshold of the 500 that you get nothing. It shouldn't be an all or nothing. To me, you should be able to get a pension, but then a smaller pension.
I believe so. And as a matter of fact, I've seen schemes that do that. You know, and even now with the public service pension scheme that they're now creating, they are now bringing it down to 3 years. You will now qualify to get a pension after 36 months. But at the same time, you're taking that national insurance one to 14, almost 15 years. Doesn't make sense. You're doing something on one hand and then turning back on the other.
But you see, that makes one wonder if people read both of the bills, if they sit there with an understanding of what is happening in Barbados, because I mean that's how you govern. You can't govern in silos. The reason you're the government is because you're supposed to have oversight and know everything that's going on in different areas, and then be able to make these decisions.
Yeah, boy, I tell you. So people are here are saying that they want the politicians to be on par in terms of, because we're they had us at what, 60. Are we saying then we're going to go back to 67? We want them, so we want the contributions to be at go back to the 500, because we have to be able to say what we want. And are we saying that we need to go back to 67?
You're talking about going back to 67, I'm talking about going back to 65.
To 65. Okay, 65.
Because all you needed to maintain that 65 is proper management and not squandering the fund.
Okay.
And proper investment.
Proper management. Okay. So you're saying 65. Are we also saying that the politicians should be at 65 as well?
Look, what is good for the goose, but in terms of sauce for the goose, should be sauce for the gander. If you are politicians are giving public service, right? The guy who comes around mornings and with the truck and take up my garbage, he is also giving public service. And I believe that they give more public service and more valuable public service than the politicians that we have right now. But those guys, in order to get their pension, they have to wait 40 years to get a full pension. There is no logic to it, unless you're looking at some sort of hierarchical structure and say, well, look, we are better than them, so we get ours at 50, and and just 8 years service, the civil service a little better than them, so they will have to wait 33 and 30 years. But then the people at the statutory boards, they're going to wait 40 years to get this similar thing. Why all of us are giving public service? So all of us should be in one. This should be a public service pension plan that covers everybody, from the president down, like how it is done in the United States. Because the dog catcher and the president get their pensions under the same terms and conditions. It is just that the president might get more because he make more money. But we have these snobbish type of rules that some people should deserve more and better than everybody else. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all, because I come from the poor of the poorest of the poor, and I see how they look down people like me. I didn't have any gold spoon. I know Lynette's father. He and I sat over the table many times, so I know her background as well. And we come from the Sandy Lane, so we are not to be listened to or respected, might even be lied upon. Because today I don't see, just know what on my other party I looking and see that somebody said that I'm a member of the Barbados Labour Party. I want to be happy people saying that. But you see that, but I don't mind. Trust me, I don't mind the saying
But
these things.
Castle, if you were a member of the Barbados Labour Party, does it mean that everything that you have been saying on these programs is a lie? Weren't you largely talking about the legislation? Is it that your brain is going to function in some different way because you are or was a member of a particular party? Don't let those comments interfere with the work that you're doing.
They're trying to dismiss me. No, they can't bother me. They don't. I don't have any respect for them. They don't bother me. My thing is that some other people might listen to them and react. I said, well, look, he just want to be happy people too, and then don't prosecute their own case.
But people have to learn to be listening to what you say, what comes from your mouth, the content of your argument, and stop looking at who you might be. if I can learn anything from anybody at all, I don't look to see what they look like, where they came from, what color they are, what accent, nothing. If I can learn something, I try to learn something. And we in Barbados, we have to stop asking, well, who he is though, who she is though. Stop that nonsense. We were educated. We have to start listening to what people say, listen to what comes from their mouth, listen to what they write, be able to discern whether it makes sense or not, and try to learn from it and stop that nonsense about, so because you feel that because somebody went to a particular school, born a particular place, went overseas or not, that somehow this is going to make their brain somehow work, function better than somebody else's. You can learn things from anybody at all, and everybody I speak to, everybody, all of my clients, I can learn something from them, and I make sure that I do.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. That's very, very well said, Lynette. Very well said, because it's a kind of a culture where people are looked down on in the worst ways. I you know, it's something that I hate. Starts with that whole common entrance thing, but we won't even get into that this evening. But where I see Colin has come in, but I want to continue with Mr. Franklin a little bit. Mr. Franklin, so we're talking about what we want, right? So we agreed, and it seemed like everybody seemed to be agreeing on the 65 years. The 500 contribution, I don't know how the people feel about that, if that we should go back to that. Then we are saying that the politicians need to be on par. We're telling our government, the politicians that we've put there, they need to be on par with us, like they do in other countries. We don't want any separate. They're not going out at 50 and all of these different things. Somebody, Michael Singh, is saying the pension is half the salary of the politicians, while the other people are 1/5. We want everybody the same. Is that what we're saying, Mr. Franklin?
Yes, I'm saying, but I've been saying that for years. You know,
saying that for years.
One thing that has happened with this debate, though, is that people are becoming more aware, because right now these two pieces of legislation will impact everybody who goes into the workforce in Barbados. Everybody. So that is why people are not reacting, you know, because some people, I'm big thing, don't bother me. But when you trouble with national insurance, you know, they said your lifeline. It really is. Because there are some people without national insurance wouldn't be able to eat. Won't be able to pay their bills, because they have that as the only source of income in retirement.
Yes, it's true.
That, you know, so when you have that only source, are people going and play with it? No, you don't do that. I know now that government has messed up, and messed up royally. What you must do now is to commit to not to mess up anymore, and try to find a way to recapitalize the fund, because you are asking me to pay back money that I paid already. You're putting the burden on me.
It's unfair. It's totally unfair.
You made mistakes. I don't even know if they were mistakes, if they were deliberate or not, but you did it. You did wrong. And I am supposed to pay for your wrong?
But you have to, and I think people have to recognize that in Barbados, I can't speak for anywhere else because this is where I live. In Barbados, it has been consistently the case that people in the upper levels make mistakes, and then the other people have to pay. It happens. You would hear people talking about productivity, and they're always talking about the workers. Nobody talks about management.
Right.
The fact that managers have to manage properly. We're always looking at the workers. when managers have to manage. Barbados is a place where you become a manager based on sometimes on who you are, and you stay in the position till you retire, whether the company is making profits or not. But everybody in Barbados, well, not everybody, but most people in Barbados haven't watched sports, how the sports are done internationally. They look at football. They start saying, oh, well, that team ain't doing good. They're going to soon fire the coach. They're going to soon fire the manager. And they understand that. And they think it's a good thing. But in Barbados, that's not the case. We never penalize management. The people then always have to pick up the slack when they do not have the opportunity to do anything different. It's the managers that do those things, that make those decisions. And then the workers have to pay. It's not right, it is wrong. You see in other countries, they fire the CEO if they're not making the money they're supposed to make. They don't fire the workers, they fire the CEO, they get a new CEO.
Correct.
So that has that thinking, because the truth is, the people think that way too. It's not just the management. They accept that you're not going to change the management. They accept that. All that has to change if Barbados is going to go forward, because the people who are in management positions, they have to perform too.
So I mean,
on more than one occasion, I have heard MPs. I think I heard Sandra Bradshaw speak to people being paid based on productivity. I don't think she understands what she's talking about. Now, in the public service, you have some jobs that must be there. They don't produce a lot of things. Like, for instance, you have a fireman. You can pay him based on the amount of fires that you have. You know? No. So how many fires he out? You are hoping that they don't have any fires at all. But if there's one, he's there to put it out, you know. Now, if you don't lock up enough prison officers, we can send them home, say they're not very productive. Policemen, they have enough crime, we can do. You have to have them, just in case this thing happens. If you're selling stamps at the post office and paying out pensions, you service everybody that come to you on that day. And then you're going to tell me that they're not being productive? No, but I service everybody that come to Boston come. But they hear things and they rush off with them because they sound good, but they don't understand what they're talking about. You know, you can't expect to, mind you, if you are plotting baskets, and if I can block 50 and if I can block 12, but you know, develop plotting 50 more productive. But it don't work so in the private sector, the public service, that services. You know. But they work off, and then they say, "Oh, we got to change this, we got to change that, we got to change that." They're talking foolishness, and they think they're making sense. You know, it irks me to hear them talking. But they say, "Look, just like this pension thing, they can't up to 68 for everybody, including the policeman." You say 68-year-old constable on the road. You think a fella can pay you any money? 68-year-old fireman, 68-year-old bus driver, who's sitting down there as well and eyes going and all kind of stuff. You must understand that there's certain jobs, like for instance, 68-year-old air traffic controller. Next thing you hear, boom, you look up, you see two planes coming down at you. You have to have understanding of what you're dealing with. They're just talking pretty. How could you change everybody age to 68?
Except yours. That's the thing, and that's the thing.
And the thing is with them, they can sit there and talk rubbish till they're 100.
Correct.
You know?
So hold a minute. What I'm trying to get at here, let me just read the things. I want to get to Mr. Colin, but just bear with me. I want to make sure we know what we want, because we want to complete the petition by tomorrow. So we are saying that 65 years, 500 contribution. Politicians need to be on par with everybody else. More compliance officers. I saw that in the chat to ensure contributions are
But what we
paid.
must also do
Mhm.
is to pay back the money that they took from national insurance and go after the defaulters. People who
Okay.
owe money are not paying. These are things that you must do as well.
The
Because,
money that was written off, you mean?
well, the government, when the money written off, it's still owed, you know. Doesn't mean that you're
I
not
know.
covered anymore. So they
No,
still owe it.
I just wonder if you mean that one or if you mean money that went into private sector projects.
Them go pay back too.
People,
But then that money,
people. I suggested that, and someone was telling me that money is dead. That is too long. So I said, well, that's very interesting for a government that is pursuing reparations. Well, hold on. How long ago that was? So I don't know how you could be pursuing reparations and telling me that a couple of years ago is too long. The parliament can make anything.
yeah.
Oh,
You know,
no,
they said,
that's
no, what,
hilarious. Oh my gosh.
I was Churchill or whoever that said it, but he said that the only thing Parliament can't do is to make a man a woman a man, and they have no proof of that to be wrong. They can do
Correct.
anything.
That is so funny. That is funny. But let me so we have 6 things and people we're closing soon. So please put what you want. What is it that we want? Because you see, when we have these things, whether it's 6, 7, 10, you know, we're going to stick to them. This is what we want. You understand? All right. So think about it. Let me go to Colin and Colin. I'm going to read the chat. Go ahead, guys. Put the stuff in the chat because we're closing. Go ahead now, Mr. Colin. Thanks for joining. I see you've been on, I think, almost every night so far.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I missed the first one.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Pleasant
So
night, each and everyone.
Good night.
yes. Good night.
And I want to thank Miss McLean. She's not here any longer. I want to thank you, Mrs. Weeks, Miss Eastman, Caswell. I shout your name from the mountaintop. It's not a problem. Okay. I am here to support what Miss Eastman is saying with respect to the attack on our public interests, assets. I call them direct revenue generating entities. I'm speaking about entities that were under central government's protection, if you want to use that word, or entities that were not in central government, but like SOEs, state-owned entities, and so on that generated money for the state. I pay a lot of attention to international affairs. I go into countries via the internet and listen to the parliaments in those countries. I listen to the people on the streets in those countries. I go on to this gentleman by the name of Carl Schwab. What's his organization again? The World Economic Federation.
World Economic Forum.
Right. And I would listen to the guests that he bring that are speaking. They are primarily multinational corporation individuals, men and women, a few leaders of countries here and there. But if there's one sure thing that is taken away from all of my research, is that private enterprises, multinational corporations are taking over sectors in countries that make money. Nobody is trying to get the ombudsman's office here in Barbados. I use that as an example all the time. No private sector entity is trying to get that office. Why? It doesn't bring in any revenue, to my knowledge. Banks do, insurance corporations do, oil terminals do, shares in light and power, shares in the telephone, the sugar industry, the byproducts of the sugar industry, rum, molasses, biomass, so-called renewable energy. We could go the airport, the seaport. We could go on and on and on. Those entities, to my understanding, were very important to the infrastructure of Barbados as an incorporated entity. All incorporations, to my understanding, have a product to sustain them. Barbados's products were its bank, ICBL, its sugar industry, its oil terminal, etc., etc., etc. I hope people are understanding what I'm saying. This nation, for all of those years, had a standard of living, a quality of life based upon the funds that were coming from those entities, including the little taxes here and the little taxes there. But when you take those entities and you sell those entities, or you lease those entities, the $18 million every quarter that was coming out of these 15 sectors, we don't get that money anymore. I want people to calculate the amount of money that we do not get anymore. And if we're not getting that money anymore, and the country still has to be living on that standard, the money has to come from somewhere. Where is it going to come from? My observation tells me it comes from taxes, fees, and excess borrowing. And that puts you on a revolving cycle of just working to pay debt. That's what I see. If we do not have assets that are working for us as an entity, an incorporated entity, I'm not talking about myself, I'm not talking about Miss Eastman, I'm not talking about anybody in the chat who does a 9-to-5 job or have their own enterprise and make their own money to look after their families and their own private interests. I'm not talking about that. That money belongs to us. But we had entities that work for the state. We don't have those entities anymore.
Okay.
If you guys understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Colin, I take your point, because basically the question that people are asking, how would you recapitalize the fund? How would you recapitalize it? And you're saying that for a one-off payment, we've given up those assets that could have been generating revenue. So basically on a monthly basis, continually. And you know, that is a big problem that Barbados has. It's a big problem that we have in terms of our continued development. You know, what were the sectors that we're actually earning money from? To me, that is very worrying, and I wonder why people don't talk about it more. Because all of these things are going to affect the National Insurance Fund.
Absolutely.
It's just, you know, it's basic. And, you know, we need to be addressing those things. What is actually going to earn the money? And I mean, I've been saying this for years. I don't think enough emphasis is being placed on actually generating money by Barbados. It can't just be tourism.
Right.
It can't just be tourism.
Correct.
So I don't know. That's
look, a
bigger, broader issue.
Look, I sat down and I listened to a number of these big, powerful CEOs of these multinationals speaking at the World Economic Forum. Okay, and they tell you clearly, they say clearly, we dispatch our agents to go and speak to the leaders of these countries, and they make it seem all professional and business-like. And we ask them to open up their doors to the private sector to come in and invest and stuff like that. And I'm saying to myself, well, that's what we have going on all along. Well, I born in this country, raised and see that we have people coming in from outside and they invest in Barbados. Okay, but I saw beyond that. I saw beyond that, and I understood, looking at Venezuela, Bolivia, Cuba, all of South and Central America, what they did to South and Central America, I understood that they're not really asking. They're coming to take. And they're using individuals like Prime Minister, they're using individuals like Prime Minister Mia Marley to do it. as soon as she got into power, she didn't waste any time starting to put these things into private sector hands. Back in 2012, Peter Wickham was advocating strongly about this privatization. And he was saying the country already privatized, so was the big problem. You have people on the street doing the business. But we understand that in politics, privatization does not mean that I have my job or Mr. Eastman has a job or anything like that. No, it means that you're asking the state to sell or open up entities that the sugar industry, the banking sector, the insurance sector, the seaport, airport. You're asking to open them up so that private people can come in and invest. But when that happens,
Colin, listen, it's quite interesting. It's a pity you came on so late. But it's past 10 o'clock, and I think we're going to try and close off now. But some excellent points, because you're talking about how we are going, could be able to get money. You're talking about revenues, and that is important. So unfortunately, we have to close off right now, but let's just revise. Let's just summarize what it is that we want. Okay, in this particular instance, so we are saying 65 years, 500 contribution. Politicians on the same par with everybody, more compliance officers to ensure contributions are paid in, pay back the money, go after the defaulters, identify the leaks in the NIS scheme, get the unpaid contributions from the big businesses, withdraw the current legislation in its present form, regular audits. Those are all the things that I was able to capture. And yes, is that correct, Mr. Franklin?
Yes.
Colin, are you adding something that we want? Yes, go ahead, please.
I think that the NIS should return back to central government. That's me.
Okay,
thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. So I think we have at least 11 things that we want, and we are going that when we go on the street, we know exactly why we're going. You understand? When the petition comes, you know why you're signing, and we will seek to have all of those things listed. This is what we're doing, right? And so that we are all on one page as we go. Lynette, is there anything you want to say to your people, say to Barbadians, and then Mr. Caswell, we always give him the last word. Go ahead, Lynette, before we close.
Oh, very quickly, that point that was raised by Colin about the new structure for the NIS, we talked about it, but we didn't say if we agreed with it or if we should go back to basically what Colin said. So basically, that's one of the things that we have to determine as well. I think that this particular piece of legislation, as we discussed, is going to have a significant impact on all Barbadians. And we must not only look at what is in these two pieces of legislation, but we have to think forward in terms of what could happen. This is why I raised the point about if you're going to change the amount of contributions when an individual entered the scheme, knowing it was 500, then a person who is currently getting a pension, is there not that possibility too, that person's pension, the amount that they receive, can that not also be changed? So seeing that we are in a position where the government has the 2/3 majority, for sure, it means that the government can change just about anything it wants to change. And I make that point because I want to make the point to Barbadians that this is something that all of us must be concerned about. Don't think, well, I have my pension, I retired, so that doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm young, so I got all the time in the world, let the rest figure it out. No, all of us need to be concerned, and you know, if you talk to somebody and they say, oh, I don't know what's going on, remember that these discussions are still available, that you can have a look at on YouTube. They're still available. So I want those that are here to spread the word about how important a thing this is to us. They've told us all this time the NIS is our lifeline. I believe that. So I am fighting for my life basically, and others need to do the same thing. Thank you. And thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Caswell.
Thank you so much, Lynette. It's been, you know, invaluable what you've been sharing, and educational, informative. And thank you. I realize, I know it's a sacrifice, but this is our country, and we're making this sacrifice. Mr. Franklin, God bless you. God bless you, sir. God bless you for your sacrifice and your love for people, and for being here. What is it you want to say to your people tonight?
As I've been saying all along, stand up. You have your future in your hands. The politicians don't owe you anything, and they're showing that they don't owe you anything. They owe the people that fund them outside, the people who put the money in their political campaigns. These are the people who get the contracts. You are just cannon fodder. You know, people ask how cannon fodder is. You know, the old days you have a horse out of man running toward the gun, so you shoot them down first and the general to steady back. Or stay to the side. You really don't matter until it is just a couple of weeks before election time. Make sure they know that you matter all the time, and try to be independent as possible. Think for yourselves. Do not let the politicians think for you. They plant a lot of nonsense in your head, and people walk about saying things that are not true. And if you speak up, you're a villain. I don't mind being demonized or whatever. I know better. I know who I am, and I like who I am, and I'm not going to change because somebody curses me. But precisely, what I want to talk about is you. Stand up for yourselves. I remember we used to be our brother's keeper. You know, I remember when I grew up, we had neighbors who we would give things to be share things. They would give us, and we could share them. Well, do it on a bigger scale now. Take care of each other still. We are our brother's keepers. The people who they're selling our interest to overseas are not their keepers. They are here to make money. And when they make money, they're going to take it back home, wherever home is. But for you, home is here. And if you do not protect your own interests, nobody else will. You know? Please think on the things that we have said over these last few days. And trust me when I tell you, I am not doing this to change the government or anything like that. That is not my goal. I am doing these things to make sure the government changes its behavior, because they're not behaving like the government of the people for the people. And that's what we want. They get instructions from overseas. This is what they're going to do to Barbadians. And even though they know it's going to hurt, you know, they do it nonetheless because they're taking directions. No. You were not elected to penalize us. You were there to make our lives better. And if you can't do that job, leave. Let somebody else try.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining again tonight. And we're going to send out the information as soon as we get it. I'm sure we're going to take a rest on Thursday night, but once we're going to go out Saturday, we're going to be on again Friday night. Okay. If we're going to go out Saturday, once we get that permit, listen out, make sure you do everything in the evening early, cook your dinner early, and come and sit around again, because we're going to come back once we're going out Saturday. If we're going Saturday, we're going to definitely have the show Friday night. Okay. But we're going to take a break tomorrow night. In the meantime, share this out. You heard, you're responsible. We're different kinds of people now, right? We're taking responsibility, right? This is our country, and we're taking responsibility. When you see that petition comes out tomorrow, send it out, sign it and send it out. Just share it. Okay. And when you see the stuff come out about the protest march, do the same thing and make sure you put on your clothes and come down there. All right, guys, have a good night. Sleep well. And I want to bless you all. I bless Mr. Franklin, bless Lynette, Maxine, and everybody who contributed. I just bless you, and I just declare that we're going to get a solution to this thing. And we thank God for what happened today, that there's some delay, and the pressure is on. And we will not back down. We're declaring we're not going to back down. We're going to keep the pressure on. God bless you all. Enjoy your night. God bless. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Yes, bye-bye.